We're going to do introductions.
Yeah. All right, chair sees a quorum. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First off, we're going to go around and do some introductions here. Representative Snow will start at your end.
Good afternoon. I'm Craig Snow from District 22, which is primarily Kosciuszko County.
Atlantis Richter, House Republican Fiscal Analyst.
Kyra Helming, Senate Republican Fiscal Analyst.
Chris Garten, technologically impaired from Senate District 45, all of Clark County and portions of Floyd.
I'm Jessica Harmon with Legislative Services Agency.
I'm Ed Delaney from House District 86, which is on the north side of Indianapolis.
Lisa Ackelbert, Deputy Budget Director.
Courtney Everett, Deputy Budget Director.
Chad Ranney, State Budget Director.
Krista Ricci, Senate Republican Director of Fiscal Policy.
Ryan Mishler, Senate District 9. That would be Kosciuszko, Elkhart, St. Joe, and Marshall counties.
Jeff Thompson, House District 28, parts of Hendricks, Boone, Montgomery counties.
Joe Habig, Fiscal Policy Director, House Republicans.
David Nisgatsky, Senate District 10, St. Joseph County, so South Bend, Notre Dame, and parts of St. Joseph County.
Good afternoon, co-chairs and members of the committee. My name is Fadi Kadura, Senate District 30, north side of Indianapolis.
All right, Senator Grant, we'll work on CTE training down in the southern part of the state. Okay. So the minutes have been distributed. Are there any amendments to the minutes? Is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Opposed? You also have a proposed agenda that's been distributed. Are there any amendments to the proposed agenda? All right, so.
Mr. Chairman, I may be making an amendment to delete one item later, but that depends on the testimony.
Okay. Agenda's placed on the table for discussion. So we'll start with any discussion before we start? All right. So we are going to start with Department of Administration and State Budget Agency, number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Matt Kent with the Department of Administration. On behalf of the 17 state agencies that receive capital, I'm requesting $38.5 million for the fiscal 2027 preventive maintenance budgets for those agencies. These funds are used differently by every agency, but all the funds go towards supporting the upkeep of the facilities around the state. Some common uses would include service contracts for HVAC and electrical within the buildings, roof inspections and maintenance, grounds upkeep, and equipment purchases. These agencies also use some of these funds just for some of the day-to-day costs that come up with keeping the facilities running. With the changes in the last budget bill, we come before Budget Committee to present the preventive maintenance funds. So I came before you last year and probably do so again next year as well.
Questions from the committee? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Indiana State Police.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having us. I'm Mick McClanahan, the Commander of the Logistics Division of the Indiana State Police. I'm here before you today to request the approval for projects of 3 for the state. One will be the roof replacement request, which is a total request of $1.375 million. This funding request to replace roofing systems that have exceeded their life expectancy and exhibited deterioration and water infiltration. These locations include our Lafayette Post, which is 27 years old, the roof is. The Peru Post has a 27-year-old roof, and the Lowell Post has a 27-year-old roof. We also are requesting to replace 2 structures that are located at the Bartholomew and Jackson County Fairground the state police uses during fair operations. The scope of work for these will be to remove, dispose, and install new roof systems and standards of the current structures. Also, the outbuildings at the fairground, we install with corrugated roofs to have a longer life expectancy. These improvements should ensure the facilities remain reliably functional and suitable for long-term use.
Tom, I'm going to have you do all three of them, and then I'll ask for questions, because they're all
sir.
kind of similar.
Yes. The second job includes the refurbishment of the Sellers Work Post in southern Indiana. This request is for just under $600,000. This request is for a comprehensive rehabilitation to the Sellersburg Post. This post is 45 years old. The modernization is necessary to maintain the functionality and the professional environment for our public and our personnel that work there. This will consist of replacing the existing floors and the installation of a high-traffic flooring, removal of outdated wall coverings to include wall repair and repainting, also soundproofing of our interview rooms and other sensitive areas of operation, replacement of wall ceiling tiles, replacing of aging furniture that exceeded its life usage, and also the upgrade of technology to support modern conference rooms and capability meetings. These improvements extend the long-term usability of the posts, also enhance our working environment and improve the functionality of this structure. The third job will include our cyber crimes rehabilitation. This is also the same dollar amount of just under $600,000. I will not reiterate the scope of work. It is the same structured building. The same improvements will occur at this location.
Any questions from the committee? All right, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Superintendent Scott.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me today. I'm here on behalf of the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. The Law Enforcement Academy is seeking funding to renovate the existing shooting range. The renovation will include the installation of a horizontal ricochet capturing system, which will expand the training capacity and allow simultaneous use of both the range and the emergency vehicle operations track. This improvement will help the ILEA better meet training demands and enhance the overall efficiency of our officer preparation. The system is $1.7 million to put this capturing system in place. The system requires a steel and concrete horizontal baffling system, construction at the end of the range, and connected to the earth berm. The problem has been we currently can't use the emergency vehicle operations facility and the range at the same time because of ricochets. The new construction of the emergency vehicle operations course was built in the ricochet zone for the existing range. So we didn't learn that till construction started in 2024 of the new emergency vehicle operations course. So this is a request to fix this firing range to keep stray rounds from going on to the emergency vehicle operations course.
Yeah, I know I've been pretty hard on ILEA for the construction costs, so I want to make a clarification here that this, what you're asking for, was not part of the new construction. This is an older range that was not part of that $100 million new construction.
That is correct, sir. The range was built in 1999, has served us really well. Back when it was built, there was a woods behind it, and that was the ricochet zone, so therefore we didn't know the problem existed until we started building the new track as a part of the new construction.
Questions from the committee? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have the Adjutant General's office. We do both, and then I'll open up for questions.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, and staff. I'm Major General Larry Munich, the Adjutant General of the Indiana National Guard and the Adjutant General's office. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. First, I want to thank this committee for your continued support of the Indiana National Guard's fiscally responsible modernization plan. We just opened a remodeled facility in Bloomington and will open another in Columbus this summer. These are more than just buildings. They are direct investments in our #1 priority, which is warfighter readiness. Right now, the Indiana National Guard is engaged in critical operations. We have soldiers and airmen deployed in active combat in the Middle East, supporting Operation Epic Fury, military police securing our southern border, and airmen from the 122nd Fighter Wing are securing American airspace. Your investment in these facilities has had a direct and positive impact on the readiness of our soldiers and our airmen. Beyond our federal duties, our fundamental mission is to protect our communities here at home, serving in any domestic crisis. When a tornado strikes or floodwaters rise, these modern facilities are a critical tool to enable Hoosier Guardsmen to rapidly respond. A well-maintained armory ensures our Guardsmen can answer the call to help fellow Hoosiers with the speed and efficiency that a crisis demands. The funding for the projects we have completed and those I am here to discuss today is a direct investment in the Hoosier Guardsmen who must be ready to train, fight, and win. Modernization is not a matter of convenience, it is a matter of survival. In the coming months, I plan to return to this committee to ask for support in the modernization of the Crawfordsville and Elkhart armories. Today, I'm here to ask for the release of funding for 2 critical maintenance projects. We seek funding that will support sewer and water utility extension that will begin the process to modernize the Warsaw Armory. This armory is still serviced by on-site well and on-site septic systems. The utility project, once completed, will improve water quality, improve fire protection, and significantly reduce maintenance costs of operating our own well and septic systems at this location and is a critical step prior to modernizing the armory. This project will be funded at 100% rate from the state. We are asking for the release of $940,000 for the extension of water resources from Indiana American Water. The water well is 68 years old, well beyond its program life cycle. The quality of the water from this well has been inconsistent and led to the deterioration of fixtures and existing steam boilers. The well does not provide enough water pressure for fire protection or adequately address water supply for training soldiers. The cost estimate is based on recent engineering estimates. It includes a 10% contingency in design and oversight. The next request is for approval of $476,000 for the design and emergency replacement of boilers at the Lafayette Armory. The boilers have continually been under repair for the last several years, and 2 have recently failed beyond repair and need to be replaced. These repairs have created a drain on annual PM funds for the agency through emergency repairs. The failure of this system creates undue challenges for the unit assigned in completing training and administrative tasks, as well as driving up utility bills for the provisions of temporary electric heat. The Lafayette Armory is a legacy armory, and our modernization plans anticipate it being in the inventory for at least the next 25 to 50 years. The federal government will ultimately fund 63% of this project.
Questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Department of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Greg Sarles, the Deputy Director and CFO for the Department of Natural Resources. DNR has 1 capital project on the agenda today, so thank you for the opportunity to present that. The project will continue to showcase a partnership and a vision between the Falls of the Ohio State Park and DNR. We request approval of $1,598,000 or $474, excuse me, for the Falls of the Ohio Educational Pavilion. DNR is seeking approval to construct the pavilion. The completed structure will include restroom facilities for park visitors, will be utilized for programs and events accommodating up to 90 students, and the space will be multi-purpose. However, the most anticipated use is for field trips for school groups visiting the park. This project was initiated back in 2021 and has truly been a collaboration between state park leadership, the Falls of the Ohio Foundation, and southern Indiana tourism. The community's need for an outdoor classroom and programming space to overlook the fossil beds along the Ohio River. Through an initial letter of intent and the eventual development of a grant agreement, the Falls of the Ohio Foundation will be able to make this donation with your approval.
Questions? All right, thank you. State Museum, Kathy.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for your time today and for the time you've spent with me prior to this meeting. We're here today to ask for the release of funds for 3 different projects. I wanted to start with the Whitewater Canal State Historic Site. That is a $14,660,000 project. However, we were awarded a $7 million READY grant from the IEDC that allows us to get the $7 million match that you put forth for us in 2022. What we have found is that since that project was submitted 5 years ago, we have had an increase in expenses. So in contrast to what the original project was and how it reads in the agenda, what we're asking for is the release of the matching dollars and the $460,000 such that we can fix Lock 24, the Laurel Feeder Dam, and replace and fix and make sure that the Duck Creek Aqueduct can remain standing. Okay. Secondly, we have received a $2 million grant from the Lilly Endowment to do work on the Experience in New Harmony State Historic Site in New Harmony, Indiana. Much of that will happen in Community House 2, and we're asking for $780,000 today to do the infrastructure on that house such that we can make sure that that experience is well taken care of. We need to replace the roof. We have moisture mitigation issues that need to be fixed before we can put in the actual experience. And thirdly, you'll remember that we have just invested $4 million of the state's money on the visitor center at Angel Mounds, as well as $2.5 million invested by the Lilly Endowment on the experience there in Newburgh, Indiana. However, it was a new building. We did not, relatively new building. We did not anticipate finding issues with that site. However, we did discover that there was not a membrane between the siding and the building, and therefore we're having moisture mitigation issues, which is my favorite topic, you know, and are requesting for $420,000 to replace that to protect the $6.5 million investment that we all have made.
Any questions from the committee? All right, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Board of Animal Health.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Gary Haynes with the Chief of Staff for the Board of Animal Health. I'm here today to present a request from the Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory for $686,677 to replace equipment that's coming to the end of its useful life. Specifically, they need to replace a mass spectrometry machine which detects toxic elements in samples, and then 6 thermocyclers, which are necessary to conduct PCR tests, which detect viruses and bacteria in samples.
Questions? All right, thank you. Next, we have Indiana Correctional Industries.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committees. My name's Mike Jones. I'm the controller for Indiana Correctional Industries. We're here today to ask for replacements of forklift trucks in our primary warehouse, which houses our commissary and central storage for our location in Plainfield. The request is for just under $450,000. The current units and the ones that we're replacing are 20 years old. They're from the original, when the building was built in 2004. They were ordered then.
Questions? All right, thank you. Next, we have Department of Corrections. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate your time this afternoon. My name is Kevin Orm. I'm the Executive Director of the Construction Services Division for the Indiana Department of Correction. I have 3 projects for your consideration this afternoon. The first project is at the Correctional Industrial Facility in Pendleton, Indiana. It's the replacement of housing unit doors, maximum security doors on the fronts of the housing units. The doors have been in place since 1985. These things naturally wear out through degradation, wear, use, and abuse, and it's time in their life cycle for replacement. The project total is $477,662. The second project for your consideration is at Plainfield Correctional Facility in Plainfield, Indiana. It is the replacement of 84 high-security cell doors, would be the common phrase for it, on a high-security unit in an individual housing setting. Different doors than what are requested in the front, so the price is dramatically different. But this project is for $1.4 million. This is when we have high-security offenders. This is the typical door that we put in with electronic controls and monitoring to protect them and our staff. The last project for your consideration today is the West and Central Dormitory roof replacements, also at the Plainfield Correctional Facility. Both of the roofs were put on in 1991. They're at the end of their life cycle. Both are just under 20,000 square feet of surface area. Both will be a complete tear-off and replacement with EPDM, a typical roofing job for the Department of Correction, part of maintaining this hardscape. $1,394,160 for that project.
Any questions for Kevin? Representative Delaney?
Yeah, I wanted to get a little update on some of your construction efforts and your security. I see 2 of these items are specifically related to security. Are you doing anything on the safety issue? We're having fire issues and other issues in some of our prisons. Is there currently a program specifically for Michigan City to upgrade fire protection or fire prevention?
Sir, we're covering numerous fronts of the Indiana State Prison. I'll give you a brief overview. So for reduction of the fire load, we've already removed extra property in the cells through supervised search procedures at every cell. We're currently now performing live burn testing in a mock-up cell at one of our facilities to verify a new mattress that we have purported as non-combustible truly meets our requirement. Those tests will be underway in the next couple of weeks. We're testing a broad range of mattresses for the offenders to have in their cells to determine which one is truly the best that used for that application. The current mattresses that they've had are flame resistant, but they've taken the covers off the mattresses and they've been very hard. We're looking for a better product that that will serve the offender population, provide for their safety better. Removal of the forced air vents. The Indiana State Prison was, the cell houses were built between 1923 and 1926. They get their air movement through a number of different models, a number of different mechanical schemes. One of them is a forced air ductwork underneath the offender's bunks. All of those have been removed and capped to prevent adding to the fire load and the oxygen introduction at a high rate underneath the offender's bunk into the cells. I know this sounds, I had to do a lot of research, so this sounds a little bit unorthodox. The facility's been in service for 100 years. We have numerous layers of paint. We were also already into the procurement for getting a non-combustible paint that actually locks in the 100 years of paint that are on those cell walls and mitigates their flammability, their combustibility, excuse me. Removal of the ignition sources. We've removed the cell power, the power in the cells that feed the outlets and prevent ignition, which is where all of the ignition sources have been. We're researching and procuring ground fault circuit interrupt breakers to put on the mains. This prison was never designed for this in a cell, so we're looking to put it on the main power feeds to trip out the mains. You can still get a spark, but you can't sit there and and melt things for hours until you get a fire. So we're well into that, and they're supposed to have a report for me tomorrow. The existing cell lighting is being, as of this afternoon, they are mocking up exterior cell lighting to take the electrical lighting out of the housing unit where the offenders can manipulate it and tear it up and use the source for ignition. We're looking to put them outside. We have very good plans. This is the current technology. I don't see where that will be a problem. We'll be proceeding with that very soon. Enhanced training. We've enhanced the training of our staff. We've always done training at the Indiana State Prison. We do it at all of our prisons in the NEO, the new employee orientation classes, and we also train them in their annual refresher training. The state prison, a number of sites over the years, they had went to a simulated training. We went back to live fire training with live fire extinguisher for every staff member in that facility, whether it be NEO or veteran staff. We're putting them all through it. We've procured extra gloves, escape hoods, fire extinguishers, bolt cutters for responding staff. We put them closer to the point of use throughout the cell blocks, throughout the tiers. I spent 2 days up there last week personally going through the cell blocks and going through all their procedures. One thing we're looking at, new technology is an interesting thing for an old guy like me. We're looking at AI technology and using thermal imaging cameras to detect incipient heat elevations in the housing units. It's used in industry. It's never been used in a correctional environment that I can find, and never been used in an environment like this. But that would detect the incipient heat of a 20-degree temperature change way before a fire ever breaks out. So we're investigating that. I have a couple Indiana companies, as a matter of fact, from Noblesville looking at that. And once that is validated, we'll proceed with that. The systems are, we're taking an incredible approach to it from every perspective, from detection to control of, to training, to management, sir. It's a comprehensive response.
I appreciate that. I had talked to your boss, Lloyd Arnold, yesterday. He told me you'd be ready. I didn't know you'd be quite this ready, but congratulations. A specific question that we've had about intercom systems. I know that in the Miami facility, which I've been to a number of times, the intercoms are one of the things that the prisoners will play with and get wires from.
They will, sir.
And so they're not functioning, at least not all of them, and not reliably. Have you looked into doing something about that?
Sir, I have not, and that has not been reported to me. Okay. But I will do the investigation. I actually know the people that designed that system, so I hadn't heard that there was a problem. Yeah, but they do take the wires out. They make everything from coat hangers to tattoo guns out of it, and they do destroy them.
So this is a big problem because we don't want liability. We don't want people getting killed. And we don't want the guy in the next cell being hurt by someone else's mischief. So I want to thank you for that. And I think I get the hint that this prison, Michigan City, and specifically, is 100 years old, literally. And why are we going to try to keep it open?
Sir, I won't speak for Commissioner Arnold, but I believe that going forward, that is a discussion that will be had by he and others in this committee and throughout state government of the capacity needs of the Indiana Department of Correction. Right now, if you look at our capacity needs, and that is not my world, I am the construction guy, but if you look at it and you look at the way our population is evolving and our population is rising, I don't believe there's an opportunity to shut down the Indiana State Prison. Is it old? Absolutely. This committee and others graciously gave us a large amount of money to build a new prison at Westville a few years ago, and just the amount of difference of technology between the one at the Indiana State Prison in Michigan City and one in Westville, 26 miles away, is absolutely a showcase of correctional design. The differences are immense.
We're holding aside for ICE purposes, the federal government's purposes, about 1,000 beds. I'd rather put those good old Hoosier criminal defendants in there than people who have an immigration law problem. But if we were to do that, we would free up quite a bit of space. Is there a plan to increase the ice space being dedicated in either in Miami or elsewhere?
So that would be a question for Commissioner Arnold, not one for me.
You've not been committed to doing
No,
any
sir.
work on it. Well, thank you for what you are doing. I think it's very, very useful. The last question, I think, is we're getting a very extravagant daily rent from ICE, $292 a day, which is 4 times the already reasonable federal rate. Could some of that money be put to these repairs that you're talking about, or these?
Again, sir, a question for Commissioner Arnold. I'll prepare the projects, and then they will find the funding and identify the funding opportunities, and we'll follow through.
So how are you funding the studies and changes you're already making?
A lot of it is being done with internal funding. A lot of the equipment has been ordered with that. We haven't proceeded to any of the capital projects yet, or any potential capital projects. Those would have to come in front of this committee if they were above the threshold. But we haven't reached that point yet. The internal stuff is already being funded out of facility operational funding, but that would be our CFO that would need to speak to that, not to me, sir.
Yeah, for one, I'm very looking forward to having you come in with a serious request as to what we can do to reduce the risk of liability and to protect the safety of our guards as well as of our incarcerated persons. So bring it on, and I appreciate your report. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir.
Representative Delaney, I can answer 2 of those. So when we agreed to release the money for the new prison, part of the deal was that they would eventually phase out Michigan City. That was something that we did before we agreed to release the money for the new prison. The second thing was you asked him about the federal money. That would go to the general fund. And so I would hope that we would be able to consider using it for some of those things. But again, that would be decided it'd be appropriated because it'd be in the general fund.
On your first point, it was my understanding when I supported the Michigan City expenditure that they were going to close that facility to the benefit of the community there. Was that your understanding? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you say close, they were going to phase it out, so eventually close it, yes. There was no discussion of the use of the property, at least with us. I know there were some letters sent out between the administration, the previous administration and the city. That was unbeknownst to us. When we released the money, we were just under the agreement that it would eventually be closed, but no specific use, whether we would use it, the locals, that wasn't discussed.
Well, I think I was one of the many people who thought that's what the deal was. I hope we get back to that. I hope we close that outdated facility. Trying to patch it back together makes no sense, and Michigan City could benefit for having a reputation for something other than the prison. They could put that ground to good use, so I hope we get there. And I'm sorry that these understandings don't always get nailed down in legislation. We may see that problem again later today. Thank you.
Well, if there was a local agreement, we'll just say I was not privy to that agreement. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nathan Hood, and I am the Assistant Director for Statewide Facilities with INDOT. The Indiana Department of Transportation is requesting funding in the amount of $350,000 to build a Stage 1 pre-wash pit at the existing salt building at the Indianapolis Subdistrict Complex. The existing salt building does not have a pre-wash pit, and that hinders INDOT's operational needs, especially during the winter. Currently, when trucks are washed, the water contaminated with heavy grit and salt is not contained properly. Either the dirty water is not contained at all, or it is contained in a containment pit in the final wash bay, which can tend to clog up after just a few trucks going through there. The wash bay would then become inoperable, and we'd have to wait for someone to come in and clean those out before we can wash more of those trucks. The Stage 1 pre-wash pit would allow for the sub-district to clean off the trucks and reuse that heavy grit, which can be used, salt, and recycle that use and recycle the water to make brine, which we've started using a lot more often. It'll also allow the winter operations at this location to continue normally without any interruption for needing to clean out these containment pits in the final wash bays. The second project that we have for consideration today is in the amount of $4,750,000, and this is for repair of salt dome concrete walls. This would be at 19 different salt domes around the state. Salt infiltration has caused corrosion of the steel reinforcement bars over time. This then causes the concrete to delaminate from the rest of the wall. And these buildings were identified by a third-party structural engineering consultant as needing repair. This assessment took place shortly after our discussion in December with that salt building that was eventually torn down later that month. Without repair, these concrete walls are in danger of overturning sometime, estimated within the next 5 years or so. And this funding would allow the reinforcement of these walls and extend the useful life of these buildings by an estimated 20 years. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one. I don't know if you have the answer to it today. How many salt domes do we have?
There's 118 as of our most recent data.
Are most of them in the northern part of the state?
It's split probably mostly pretty evenly, maybe 60-40 at best, maybe in the northern half, but I could get you a better answer to that if you want.
Just curious, because we're doing a lot of, every year we get salt domes to repair, and just wondering how many we had, so.
Yeah, and a portion of that is the older buildings don't have any additives mixed into the concrete that are waterproofing the concrete. We've since started using that in the last 20 years or so, so hopefully, that slows down over time.
That's fair. Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you. State Fair Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Christina Hannon. I'm the CFO for the Indiana State Fair Commission. On behalf of the entire team, we appreciate your ongoing support for the capital investments required to maintain and operate the campus. Today, we have 3 requests on the agenda. I'd like to start with roof replacements. We have 2 roof requests. Grand Hall is approximately 8,000 square feet. It has a shingle roof, and the replacement cost is estimated at $400,000. The Champions Pavilion is roughly 66,500 square feet with synthetic rubber roof, and the replacement cost on that one is $1.8 million. Both facilities are critical to our year-round operations, and the existing roofs are deteriorated and beyond their useful life. These replacements will preserve the buildings and provide more energy-efficient systems with 30-year warranties. My last request is for technology, equipment, and infrastructure upgrades. That project's estimated at just over $1 million. The scope includes replacing outdated equipment and expanding our fiber and wireless capacity to meet increasing demand. These improvements will better support the growing density of connected devices and reduce cybersecurity risk.
Questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we've got the university projects. First up is, I see Brooke, Ivy Tech.
Yeah, is that okay? Good, because that was my speech. Thank you so much. Brooke Burtnett-Wiesner, representing Ivy Tech, here with Amanda Wilson, the VP of Capital Planning and Facilities. We're here to talk to you today about 2 projects. The first is the proposed Terre Haute project, which is a $3 million component of the previously requested extensive $67 million project. Without funding for the full campus renovation, the college is moving forward with a small portion of the project that will allow the college to relocate 3 health science programs, which are currently located in the portion of the building built in 1967. And it has extensive infrastructure issues, as you can imagine. The medical lab technology, the surgical technology, and medical imaging programs will be relocated to a newer portion of the building, constructed in 2003, that is conducive to renovation and will not require a rework if the larger project is later funded, which we hope it will be. These high-demand programs need to be in a classroom and lab space that reflect the environments they will encounter when they enter the workforce, not the current converted closets or other small spaces they are in currently. The relocation will create a more robust learning environment, which allows for future program growth. The college has raised $800,000 in funds, is using $1 million in R&R, and an additional $1.2 million in unrestricted net assets from the campus. The second project is the Sellersburg project, which will be a new $12.8 million, 33,000 square foot technology center to house the School of Advanced Manufacturing, Engineering, and Applied Science, and the School of Information Technology programs on the Sellersburg campus. The new building will replace the current facility, which is a 46,000 square foot manufacturing building, the Perkins Technology Center, located in Jeffersonville. When the new building is complete, we will achieve a 30% decrease in square footage while adding campus cohesion by bringing students back to the main Sellersburg campus. The college will fund the project through the sale of the current Perkins Technology Center, sale of land to facilitate the Baptist Health and Intuitive Health Project, and campus resources reserved for the project and fundraising. The project will open space that currently houses IT instructional resources, about 4 classrooms, and will allow for further nursing and physical therapy expansion. This project reduces campus square footage, improves the quality of instructional resources, and adds campus cohesion. The campus seeks approval to proceed with the project now to minimize the program displacement and speed student access to customized instruction resources. And we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Your first time and you have no questions.
First time, I know, especially from Senator Garten. Thank you.
Yeah, don't entice him.
Thank you.
Next, we have Indiana University.
Good afternoon. Zach Smith-Howard, Director of State Relations for Indiana University. On behalf of the IU Board of Trustees, we request approval to perform deferred maintenance on 8 buildings across 5 regional campuses. These facilities are vitally necessary to the teaching and research missions of IU and must be kept functioning at a high level. These projects will ensure safe, effective, and efficient learning and work environments for students, faculty, and staff through improvements including infrastructure and building systems, while also upgrading spaces for accessibility and latest technologies to support learning, teaching, and research. This is funded with $9.2 million from the state budget, and we'd like to personally thank Senator Mishler for your decades-long support of this additional R&R support for IU and Purdue's regional campuses.
Questions? All right, thank you. Next, we have Purdue. Kendra. Again, do both of them, and then I'll circle back for questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Kendra Leatherman, Director of Government Relations with Purdue University. The first project we're requesting your approval for today is the Delta Gamma transaction. I just want to clarify that this includes a purchase over $2 million and a lease term longer than 4 years. The proposed acquisition is for nearly 18,000 square foot residential property with 2 stories and a basement on 0.36 acres in West Lafayette and a parking lot on 0.14 acres at Waldron Street, West Lafayette from Delta Gamma sorority. The parking lot is located just north of the residence, and the purchase facility can house up to 78 occupants. Following the university's purchase, we're going to ground lease these back to Delta Gamma sorority on an interim basis while they construct a new facility on a piece of property that Purdue already owns at 500 North Russell Street. These parcels will eventually be ground leased to Delta Gamma at a market rate for 40 years. The transaction is in alignment with our 2018 Giant Leaps campus master plan and will total $8.3 million of operating funds. Cost is determined by the property's appraised value, the recent improvements to it, with consideration for the value of the asset's useful remaining life. Would also like to specifically note the sorority is very pleased with the prospect of this transaction, as it will give them stability for their current membership, but also provide opportunities for growth in the future. And the next item we have for your review is the renovation of the Roberts Impact Lab on our Purdue Northwest campus. The Impact Lab will serve as a research, innovation, commercialization hub that supports Indiana's efforts in the quantum corridor. The project includes renovating and repurposing a facility that had been previously part of a larger hospital complex. It requires total interior demolition and renovation to meet the needs for the new intended use. Upon completion, the first floor's 13,000 square feet will house 2 quantum computing labs, classrooms, multiple collaboration and meeting spaces, and as you can expect, systems such as mechanical, electrical, and fire suppression will need to be updated along with the new chiller and generator. The facility will expand the university's opportunities in applied research, commercialization, strengthen national security, increase economic development, and expand STEM programs for AI and related fields. Cost of the project is $10 million and will be funded by $7 million of operating funds and $2.5 million of gift funds. And I'd also like to note the $10 million will complete our obligation under a current READY grant. Happy to take any questions.
Questions for Kendra? All right.
Thank you.
The last of the projects, Vincent, Tony.
Thank you. Nice to be with you again. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tony Hahn, Vice President of Government and Legal Affairs at Vincennes University. I don't get to visit with you as much as I used to at the other job. I have 2 projects for you today for your consideration, both on the Vincennes campus, both repair and rehabilitation. We'll start with the first one, the George Rogers Clark Residence Hall renovation. George Rogers Clark, our most popular housing option for on-campus students, is an 88,000 square foot residence hall that houses 264 students, was built in 1967. This project will replace the elevator, HVAC components, including a new chiller, air handling units, all the plumbing and electrical that are required to finish those upgrades, and all of the other controls that will make it more efficient and more comfortable. This is a $2.9 million project that comes out of auxiliary reserves, which are those reserves generated from food and dining revenue. Any questions about George Rogers Clark or the residence hall? Secondly, steam plant renovation. Vincennes University utilizes a 3-boiler steam plant there on campus. That steam plant generates steam for heat and hot water for all the buildings on campus. Over the past several years, we've replaced almost 2 miles of steam line around campus, which has reduced our water usage by 55%. Now we're to the point where we need to replace 2 of the 3 boilers. Boiler 1 is 32 years old. Boiler 2 is 42 years old. So it's safe to say fully depreciated, still in use. And we've patched them together the best we could. We've limped them along, but now it's time to make the investment to replace those 2 new high-capacity boilers, which should save us 10 to 15% on the gas usage. Given the age of the old ones, there's some extensive repiping that has to be done to accommodate the new boilers. But this is a $3.5 million project from university reserves that we have put back knowing that we would need to replace these. Any questions about boilers?
Questions? You said you don't see us as much. Does that mean your current employer doesn't do as many projects as your previous employer?
Perhaps they're under the threshold.
All right. Saving us some money. I like that.
Smaller campus, smaller projects.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to move on to the review items. We're going to start with professional licensing agency.
Thank you. My name is Nick Hart. I'm the Deputy Director of the Indiana Professional Licensing Agency. I'm here on behalf of the agency and the Indiana Speech Language Pathology and Audiology Licensing Board to ask this committee's approval for a proposed fee to that culminates the implementation of the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology Licensing Compact. Indiana became a member of this compact when the General Assembly passed a law and it was signed by the governor on, it was effective July 1, 2022. The Compact Commission charges a fee to obtain a privilege in lieu of an Indiana full license to get that privilege, and then Indiana is also required to implement a fee. The board has voted to proceed with a $50 fee to obtain a compact privilege. This is less than the Indiana single state license fee would be. That's a $100 fee. The fee is would only be applicable to out-of-state licensees who want to provide services in Indiana and are choosing this pathway instead of actually applying for a full Indiana single state license. And the fee for reapplication or renewal would be the same. Based on kind of basic analysis of the kind of volume of applications we receive from speech language pathologists and audiologists now, we expect this to have be revenue neutral for the number of applications we receive that are fewer because we're getting fewer reciprocity applications. We anticipate we'll receive more applications through the compact because it's an easier application pathway that people in other states might choose to utilize more routinely. So in general, I just ask you approve the fee because it kind of culminates the General Assembly's requirement by passing the law to establish this compact, and we anticipate that it will be revenue neutral. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All right, thank you. Next, we have the Horse Racing Commission.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. David Rothenberg, I'm the General Counsel for the Indiana Horse Racing Commission. Today, we're asking you to approve a late fee that we're requesting so that we can promulgate rules which will allow late registration for thoroughbred horses. It's a $1,000 fee. We anticipate maybe 10 horses a year, coming to about $10,000. Those fees go into the breed development fund, which gets put back to the horsemen. So the agency doesn't keep the fee, the state doesn't keep the fee, it goes back to the horsemen. In fact, this rule change has been requested by the horsemen themselves. So the constituents have asked for this change. Right now, there's a definite deadline where if you don't meet it, even though your horse may qualify as an Indiana bred horse, too bad. I came here in October and asked for something almost exactly the same for the standard bred breed horses, and it was approved here. This is for the thoroughbred breed horses. Any questions?
Questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Criminal Justice Institute.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Doug Hunsinger, the Executive Director of the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute. I have two grants to present for your review. The first is with the Bureau of Justice Assistance at the U.S. Department of Justice to improve community supervision services. The Institute has partnered with the Indiana Department of Correction for this application. The goal is to reduce recidivism and increase public safety by supporting local probation and community correction agencies and implementing a continuous quality improvement model for evidence-based correctional practices. The total funding amount that CJI is requesting from the BJA is $1 million over the next 3 years. If awarded, the project will run from June of this year through September of 2029. This grant does not require state matching funding, additional permanent full-time employees, or the requirement of new policies that must be met by the state of Indiana. The second grant is with the Office for Victims of Crime at the U.S. Department of Justice, two organizations who provide victims to services to victims of human trafficking. The goal is to enhance the availability of services that victims of labor and sex trafficking often require to address their needs. Project activities include administering a competitive funding opportunity, supporting partner organizations who provide these services, and monitoring and evaluation of these processes. This grant does not require additional full-time employees or requirements that must be met by the state of Indiana. The grant does have a 25% match that will not come from state funds, but rather in-kind contributions from grantees that will be used to satisfy the match requirement. The total funding amount requested from OVC is $1.2 million over the next 3 years. If awarded, the project will run from July of this year through September of 2029. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All right. Thank you. Next up, we have Department of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Greg Sarles, back for the second time today. DNR has one new grant on the agenda today. Thank you for the opportunity to review this grant and answer any questions that you may have. The new grant that I will present today is in cooperation with the Division of Water and the USGS, United States Geological Survey. This grant will specifically aid the monitoring of groundwater. The Groundwater and Stream Flow Information Program within the USGS is offering a cooperative funding opportunity to state and local water resource agencies to support new and existing data providers with funding to enhance the national groundwater monitoring network. By monitoring groundwater, DNR and the USGS can provide answers to questions on groundwater availability at a principal or major aquifer. USGS will assist by providing guidance and support for site selection, techniques for collection at site information, and well maintenance and drilling development. This is a 2-year grant starting in September of 26, ending in September of 28. This will help support 5 existing staff members with wireless devices and equipment at 11 test sites.
Questions? All right, thank you. Next, we have the IEDC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Budget Committee. This is a grant that was originally awarded all the way back in 2024. This is a grant for sort of the ability of Indiana manufacturers, lots of them suppliers and automotive, to update technologies and manufacturing processes to take advantage of EV and hybrid vehicle processes. No state match required here. This is one that we will do with existing administrative resources. So feel pretty good about this. The Trump administration put this on pause for a while as they sort of looked at this through their early processes. Really has expanded to focus a little bit more on hybrid and be a little bit less focused on EV. That feels like a really good opportunity here for Indiana employers.
Questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have FSSA.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of the committee, nice to be with you today. Today, FSSA is seeking Budget Committee review of amendments to our home and community-based, or HCBS, waivers. I'm joined by Kelly Mitchell, our Director of the FSSA Division of Disability, Aging, and Rehabilitation, known to most of you as DDARS, to discuss the waiver amendments in more detail. Before we dig in, I wish to provide some background on the process for these amendments because it's a bit different than the typical process we use. The agency typically seeks Budget Committee review prior to seeking public comment. But for these amendments, because of the level of complexity, FSSA received public comment prior to this presentation. Your staff have also reviewed links to the full waiver amendment text and the accompanying fact sheet. These have been available to the public as well throughout the public comment period. Additionally, the agency presented on these amendments at the DDARS Advisory Committee and hosted stakeholder webinars to discuss these amendments. The amendments are primarily focused on cost containment and program integrity, aligning waiver policy with current practice and administrative transparency. While a December 2025 Medicaid forecast showed a promising projected surplus for the biennium, there is still a long road ahead to firmly establish the Medicaid program on solid fiscal footing and ensure long-term stability of benefits for recipients. The cost containment measures we seek today are important structural reforms that will address several of the misaligned incentives in these waivers. I now turn to Director Kelly Mitchell to walk through the additional detail of the waiver amendments and the information included in your packet today. Kelly?
Thank you, Secretary Robe. Good afternoon. As stated, I'm Kelly Mitchell. I'm the Director for the Division of Disability, Aging, and Rehabilitative Services. Today, we are going to be presenting to you the proposed amendments to FSSA's Pathways, Health and Wellness, Traumatic Brain Injury, Community Integration and Habilitation, otherwise known as the CIH, and Family Support, or FSW, waivers. As noted in the waiver amendment documents that have been referenced and fact sheets that you have previously received and available on the FSSA website. How do I advance this way? Perfect. You will see before you on the screen that the proposed amendments are targeted for an August 1st, 2026 effective date according to this timeline. FSSA was very intentional in advising stakeholders of the plan to amend the waivers and sharing details of the amendment as well as the public comment process. Due to the complexity of the waiver amendments, the presentation to State Budget Committee was intentionally scheduled to follow the public comment period as well as the legislative session to afford full opportunity for committee members to review the amendments and full public comment. As you will see, as we progress, the amendments focus on continued improvements to program integrity, cost containment, procedural alignment, and administrative transparency. On the screen before you, you will see that the proposed change with the most significant fiscal impact is the daily rate mandate for members that are on the Community Integration and Habilitation, or CIH, waivers with an acuity level of 3 or higher. This change was necessitated through misuse and overutilization of the current ability to choose between an hourly or daily rate in situations where the member lives in a shared setting outside the family home. There is no change to the current rates of reimbursement for either the daily rate or the hourly rate, and there will be no disruption of payment for or service delivery to the member in this transition. This daily rate allows for budget predictability, not only for the state, but for the member and the provider. And this will include strict documentation requirements to allow us as FSSA to continue to gather data regarding the quality of service. This next set of proposed amendments correct the rate buildup for personal care services when the employee or direct service worker resides with the member. The modification removes only the cost factor to reimburse providers for hourly wage and mileage expenses for employee travel between unique members and service delivery locations. With a live-in caregiver, there is no travel downtime incurred by the employer between those unique settings and members. It is important to note that there is absolutely no reduction in the hourly pay rate for the caregiver. The rate remains stable in the buildup in the overall rate reimbursement. The other correction clarifies which home and community-based waiver services may be provided by family members that are not legally responsible. The proposed change does not change the historical limitation of 40 hours per week per family member, nor does it impact or reduce the approved service budget for the member. The clarification of allowable services within the waiver document is necessary due to some managers authorizing and some providers employing family members for services that were never intended to be delivered in the home or by a family member. This isn't only about service integrity, but protection of member rights. By adding this enhanced definition of allowable services, FSSA intends to ensure services are based on member needs and choices of the member rather than another's income or revenue target. You'll see on this next screen that we are proposing a modification to benefits counseling. Benefits counseling is a newer service to home and community-based waiver. The service is being limited to 6 hours annually to ensure that there is appropriate, targeted, and intentional use of the service as part of exploration and skills development for competitive integrated employment. The waiver continues to offer an array of support for competitive employment, and when and if an individual utilizes vocational rehabilitation, or VR, for job placement and support, benefits counseling that is specific to the individual's employment goal is available at the time of engagement. The next amendment limits markup to 30% for specialized medical equipment, such as wheelchairs, lifts, transfer devices. And the next mention is of revising the definition, of remote supports. This is meant to encourage utilization of shared staffing and other solutions by indicating that remote support does not only include cameras and virtual technology. So no change in rate, no change in availability. Finally, on this page, the amendments also better define home modification cost. In order to avoid members incurring unplanned or unbudgeted expenses for home repairs that are not covered by this service. As an example, a modification to create a walk-in shower is an allowable expense. However, if there are plumbing and infrastructure repairs needed, those are not considered a home modification and would be at the expense of the homeowner. There we go. This next amendment creates a contractual versus provider relationship with case management entities, and that allows the state to establish metrics and better control the work of selected entities. The contract includes value-based payment elements to support FSSA's movement toward an improved model of care, and a smaller number of case management companies, between 3 and 9, allows standardization of the care coordination model and improved quality oversight. Currently, there are 34+ independent case management companies in the health and wellness and traumatic brain injury space, supporting approximately 15,000 individuals. Selective contracting has been in place for the CIH and family support waiver since January of 2022, with 6 entities supporting 34,000+ members. The bids from interested case management entities are currently under review, and we anticipate an award late this month or early May, with implementation in August. And finally, these last items ensure waiver documents reflect our current policies and practices, and the proposed amendments are administrative in nature. The revision to the behavior management definition and allowable services is based on stakeholder feedback, as individuals and families indicated the need to utilize the service intermittently, consultatively, consultatively or as a one-time intervention. The changes in the reserve capacity categories for CIH ensure appropriate access to this emergency priority need comprehensive waiver. The changes are necessary due to misuse of the reserve category that was initially intended to support the deinstitutionalization of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Post-closure of our state institutions, this priority category unintentionally created a backdoor or gateway to the CIH for individuals who did not meet the emergency placement criteria. So individuals who did not meet that criteria on the CIH would move into a small group home, 4 to 8 people, and within 30 to 60 days, they would transition to the CIH home and community-based waiver. In the past year, this category consumed the majority of our available and limited slot capacity for this comprehensive emergency placement waiver. I do want to note that individuals residing in more restrictive institutional placements, such as our extensive support needs homes, our comprehensive rehabilitation management needs facilities, and nursing facilities, continue to remain a priority reserve capacity. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Questions from the committee? Senator Cadora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for your presentation. I have a few questions. Can you clarify the changes to the pathways waiver in the document to the Budget Committee? Among the changes that are suggested are include the health and wellness and the pathways waiver. Looking at this specific document that was given to us, what is the specific change to the pathways waiver? And what is the, as of today, what is the current wait list? How many people are on the pathways waiver wait list?
The changes to the pathways waiver, there are some shared across all of the waivers. That would predominantly be the correction of the reimbursement rate for the live-in caregiver, eliminating that windshield time piece of the rate buildup, as well as the clarification around allowable services for family members to provide. The other technical cleanup would apply on that last page. Obviously, most of these were specific to CIH or FSW, but the two that I mentioned early would be a shared change across all the waivers to ensure consistency. As far as the pathways waiver waiting list, I will check my notes. That is available publicly on our waiting list dashboard. But I believe there are around 11,700 individuals. I will note about 50% of those individuals move through to active service delivery.
Thank you. Can you clarify the documents vaguely and briefly on the presentation references clarifying services? What does clarifying services mean specifically? What services will be changed across those different programs? So that the documents did not go to that level of detail of what changes will actually occur.
When we reference clarifying service definitions, there have been no changes per se in allowable services or definition of services. There have been revisions to improve clarity. Specifically, as I mentioned, allowable services for family members to provide. It was not expressly stated in the waiver documents that a service such as day habilitation was meant to be provided in a facility setting, communication, because it just wasn't considered at the time. So that needed to be added for clarity's sake. The other would be the remote supports. That was clarity and definition to say remote does not just mean technology. It does not just mean virtual support through a camera. That could be someone who is within 20 minutes that's available by phone and other nature. So that's what's meant by clarification.
I appreciate that response. according to your analysis, with these clarifying of services or the clarification of services, and with the fiscal impact where I see some reduction on some of these line items, does your analysis show any impact to the quality of services offered or impact directly to who your patients or Medicaid recipients on these programs?
Yes, quality of services, particularly around the changes for selective contracting for case management. That is very foundational toward our movement of a new model of care, really focused on outcomes-based, not just delivery of units. There are also increased documentation standards, and the definition improvements also support clarity in the desired outcome of services. But the case management would be most significant. It is foundational. That is the connection with the individual. They are ensuring that the supports are appropriate to the need and that the quality of service is there, and they are assisting in not only the budget planning, but identification of resources.
I appreciate it. My final question, and I have one for the Secretary, but for you, one last question. Selective contracting. When I hear that term, I think about a couple of things, that there are only specialized providers in the community, and that's why we're looking at it. Does that mean that it's selective contracting, no bid process, because the market is limited with the number of providers who can offer these services? Is that what is the case that we're talking about?
That's a very good question. No, it does not mean that. Selective contracting is a term that is used at the federal level by CMS. Typically, in home and community-based waivers, we operate under a provider model. And through that model, CMS says any entity that meets the qualifications of Medicaid enrollment definitions can enroll without limit. So you cannot restrict. What happens is you can oversaturate, you can reduce the quality of care by lessening our ability to monitor and direct. So selective contracting means that we can limit the pool of providers that are selected through a formal request for proposal process that was open to all.
Excellent. So there's still a bidding process in place.
Absolutely.
You're just limiting the pool of
The final selection of the candidate. So we are limiting the network, if you will, or the pool of providers.
I appreciate it. And I thank you for your work, and I hope that the agency, probably Secretary Robe, heard from me over the last couple of years on my fierce advocacy to eliminate the pathways waiver list. And I'm hopeful that we get to a point that we can work on this. So you seem to have a good news to you in our report, or?
Well, I was just going to, and Secretary Robe, thank you. Actually, I think we released early, but just yesterday we announced we'll be releasing an additional 1,700 invitations to the Pathways waiver. We are continuing to do that every month. Last month we invited 1,000 individuals. So the throughput on the invitations, we've seen significant increases from January of 2025 and continuing to see improvements through these process changes that we're implementing.
What's the acceptance rate of invitations that go out? Is it still at 70%, anywhere between 30 to 70%, or?
Pardon me?
The acceptance rate of invitations. So when what is that rate currently?
So individuals now, if they are placed on the waiting list, they are found to be functionally eligible. So we do that assessment initially. However, the individuals do still need to be determined as Medicaid financially eligible once they have been invited to the waiver, and then meet other requirements to get to active service planning. We are seeing those individuals that are invited that move to active service plan is still at 50%. So when I look at the waiting list, typically we can project that that's about 50% of the number that we see.
So on 11,000, potentially, you could have 50% of the 11,000 that could be eligible and enrolled at the appropriate time.
Yes.
Kelly, if I may, also, we've shortened the length of the invitation, right? So we circle through them at twice the pace that we used to.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think in Senator Mishler's committee, I think this last session, we had a person sitting in your exact seats And she shared the heartbreaking story that her dad was placed on the Pathways waiver list in 2024, passed in 2025, and was still on the list in 2026. So your work is extremely important. I appreciate any progress you can make on that front. My final question to Secretary Robe is, it's unrelated, and I want to be respectful of the chairman's time and the committee's time. You had to leave the MAC meeting to go to a different meeting. I made a comment to Liza that I would like to bring to your attention. I spoke with you about it during session. I'm hearing a lot of concerns about the state plan amendment and direction on the 340B. Federally qualified health centers, including the Damien Center, who serve HIV patients. You expressed to me your views on the program. I think the fiscal analysis that I've seen would bring almost $60 million to the state of Indiana, to FSSA, through the rebate program, if the program is switched from its current model to a method by which you're getting the rebates. What is the direction of FSSA from this point on to ensure that the tens of thousands of Hoosier patients who benefit from the federally qualified health centers continue to receive the support that they need in case you move the state in a different direction on the 340B?
We continue to review the information shared with us during the
public comment period.
The comment period, and we'll have a conclusion in the next several weeks.
I appreciate you. I would urge you sincerely from the tens of folks that I spoke with, if it changed, I believe in data and policy and research. They published their financial. I think your biggest concern was we just don't know how the delta between the money received by the federally qualified health centers versus the actual cost of medicine that is covered, where that money goes. So I did review some financial statements when I met with the CEOs of these federally qualified health centers. What I would urge you to do as an agency is to be extremely thoughtful in the consequences of the thousands of Hoosiers who will be impacted. These are the most vulnerable Hoosiers who rely on these services. And there could be a public health impact to changing the model. So please, whatever we can help you with, if we need to bring the CEOs of the federally qualified health centers to sit down with you to come up with an agreement, I'll be more than happy to be a player, a contributor, a supporter of this discussion, but I urge my colleagues not to rush in implementing a policy that have severe consequences to Hoosiers.
I would say that over a year ago, that proposal was approved in the budget, and several months ago, it was approved in the by this committee. I have yet to have a single meeting, nor have I had an outreach from any federal qualified health center to directly discuss some of the candid abuses in federally qualified health centers. And my door remains open.
I would appreciate, and again, to be respectful of the time, I would love to learn about any abuse that take place in any of these places, because if
$600 a visit at Meridian Health Center.
And that is one, I think when I met with you, mentioned that was one out of how many?
Bowen Center.
How many?
So the percentage of the total spend is significant, is disproportionate to the question you're asking.
So I will take an action upon myself today. After this committee meeting, I will reach out to the CEOs of the federally qualified health centers. I will copy your staff, and I will ask for a meeting, because I think
happy to do it.
I don't think that as a state legislator, I'm willing to go above and beyond. I don't think it's my role to convene these meetings to go over the details of that, but I will do it because I care about the thousands of Hoosiers who will be impacted. So you can reach out as an agency to any of these CEOs and invite them to meet with them, but I'll be more than happy to do this and engage with you to protect our.
Well, I've indicated a willingness. Senator, I would just add a couple things. First of all, our proposal does not take Medicaid funding away from a single HIP or Hoosier HealthWise member who receive full boat health care right through Medicaid today. Back when, as you know, I was in Health and Hospital Corporation, 340B pricing was vitally important for our ability to provide over 20% of Hoosiers who were then uninsured, right? It was our only mechanism for care. When we passed HIP 1.0 and HIP 2.0, the legislature and the governor and the federal government made an enormous commitment to patient care directly, not to institutions. So we chose to enfranchise the individual rather than entitle the institution. Part of the way we fund Medicaid is through rebates, and if we are not receiving those rebates, it puts further pressure on the general revenue fund.
I appreciate that. I think the data, the research, and the facts have to determine the outcome of that process, meaning if option A, which is for the state of Indiana to take the rebates to improve the program, and the data backs that up, and it shows that no Hoosier will be left behind who benefits from those services, I think many of us will be supportive. But if there's an abuse in the program, I think that is a valid concern that should be addressed, and I'll be supportive of addressing these concerns. But I don't want the communication to break between the agency and these service providers. That's what all I'm asking for, is to engage on both sides in good faith discussions to be sure that we're not moving quickly on this. I'm not a voting member of this committee, so when this committee votes on things, there are things that I disagree with, but I don't get to vote on. But I appreciate your comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can we keep it to the amendment? If you want to set up a meeting and talk about other policies in Medicaid, that's great. But let's try to keep it to the plan amendment change here. So
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Delaney.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question about one of the charts in your exhibits you didn't discuss, the one that's labeled Medicaid spending. It's a nice map of the Great Lake region. It indicates that Indiana is relatively high on Medicaid spending. And I noticed that Secretary Rube said earlier that he wants to be sure that we're on, quote, solid financial footing with our Medicaid, implying that we were not. Were we in the past not on solid financial footing in dealing
No, we
with
are
Medicaid?
not on solid financial footing.
Okay, and when did that occur and what caused it?
Okay, so I'll give you my opinion of what happened. Others will differ, and I'm happy to have that conversation. But in 2007, we passed, on a bipartisan basis, and I believe you were a member of the legislature at the time, passed the Healthy Indiana Plan. You were not. I'm sorry.
A bit too long ago. I was here for HIP 2.0.
Okay.
But not
So
HIP 1.
we passed HIP 1.0 before Obamacare, and to incentivize providers to actually get into this program, a program which required personal responsibility on the part of the patient or the recipient. We said, you know what, we're going to pay Medicare rates. We're not going to pay Medicaid rates, which were at the time probably 30%, or they were very low Medicare rates, Medicaid rates at the time. We said we're going to make HIP's different. HIP's not Medicaid. HIP's a different program, and we're going to do that. So we did. Then Obamacare came along, and eventually HIP 2.0, and CMS said, "How are you paying so little for these people who are pregnant on Hoosier Healthwise, and so much for these people who are pregnant on HIP? That's just not right." And from their perspective, because frankly, SEMA was running CMS at the time, I was helping her out. I mean, I got their perspective. We got into a position which was awkward. So the legislature, and I was not here for this, and I believe you were, decided that we would go to HIP parity. We would raise everybody up, right? So all the rates went up significantly, and that's how we ended up in that situation.
We made a conscious decision that whether you were on old HIP 1.0 or new HIP 2.0, your providers would get the same rates.
Correct.
That's the decision we made. And that wasn't, you may think it was mistaken its impact, but it was a conscious, wide open thing done under a Republican administration with support from many Democrats. Is that fair?
I was not here at the time, but I would have a hard time debating that.
Yeah, okay. Well, good, all right. So I believe we had the discussion here of these programs that we're adjusting to save some $45 million. And this is part of an overall program that you have to try to reduce our Medicaid costs. and I want to understand the impact of that. Am I right that there's about $1 billion in federal Medicaid dollars that Indiana could draw down and tap, but it will not under your proposal, under your structure?
Under the Medicaid, well, we're planning on returning $314 million in general revenue fund dollars to this fiscal year, and another, I believe, $154 million next year. So roughly speaking, that's, we would pull down 2/3 of that if we were to spend it, but we don't think it's the right thing to do, because those are general revenue fund dollars that can be used for other purposes.
But there is then, in effect, $1 billion in Medicaid fund available to treat Hoosiers that we're not going to draw down, because to get that $1 billion, we'd have to put up $314 million from our own state budget as a match.
Well,
Is
those
that right?
numbers are directionally correct, yes.
All right. So I assume fewer people are going to be treated. We're going to have fewer people on Medicaid than we could.
Well, we have significantly fewer people on Medicaid today than we did on January 13th of 2025 when Governor Braun took office. We've dropped the rolls from, the aggregate rolls from approximately 200 million to approximately 1.59 million.
The aggregate rolls?
The aggregate, the total Medicaid rolls, whether it's fee-for-service, HIP, Hoosier HealthWise, Hoosier Care Connect, et cetera. We've been a significant decrease in that.
But I'm talking about people. Are there fewer people on Medicaid in Indiana because of this program, this choice not to take the $1 billion?
No. There are fewer people on that Medicaid today because there are fewer people who are actually eligible for Medicaid today.
And that's because of the federal law change?
No, that's because we decided to implement the rules that were on the books.
Okay. So the bottom line is we've taken people off the Medicaid rolls. How many people is that?
Well,
approximately.
Call it 400,000 people, some of who lived in other states, some of who were illegal aliens.
I have no problem with those kinds of things.
Right, so
are there people who were not illegal aliens, not criminals, not from abroad, not from Illinois, who were getting Medicaid, who are no longer getting it because of what your administration, your current administration is doing?
They are not eligible for Medicaid, so in that
because we changed the eligibility.
We did not change the eligibility.
How did they get disappeared? Did they just walk away?
We enforced the eligibility rules.
Did you also stop advertising and soliciting people to become members of the Medicaid program?
We did.
Okay. That has an impact, does it not?
I hope so.
Yeah, that's your intention. All right. So I wanted to understand that. So part of what you've done to get us, quote, on a solid financial footing is to reduce the number of people in the program. Is that simple?
That's, yes.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Any other questions? Senator Garten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Robe, isn't it true, though, the Biden administration handcuffs states from being able to do redetermination and eligibility checks?
I believe that to be the case. Having not been here, I can't really speak directly to
So the reality is the majority of the people that were purging off the rolls should have never been eligible for Medicaid benefits to begin with. Is that a fair assumption?
I would modify that just a small bit and say that there was no redetermination process. So while they may have been eligible when they signed up, right, they had become uneligible, and there was no redetermination process, so they stayed on the rolls.
Sure.
Right.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, again, the people that we're mostly referring to, and I'm speaking in macro, at a macro level here.
Yes.
Are people who are not eligible per law. Those are the people being
correct.
purged.
That's right.
Okay, just clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I have one more comment? I would say if you look at the cap rate, and we talked about this at the Budget Committee meeting in December? Like if you look at the increases in the cap rate, right, the capitation rate, what we're paying on a per member per month basis, they reflect a much sicker patient population because well people are not on the program, right? It's sick people that are on the program. And you can make the argument that we ought to provide insurance to well people, but that's not the way. They've chosen not to be eligible or chosen not to sign up. So we don't see a corresponding decrease in our medical spend that we saw in the number of enrollees.
So you don't share Secretary Kennedy's idea that preventive medicine is the way to go? Because you're letting people who do not have a current big problem stay away from doctors.
As I have spent in the last 30 years of my career, I have spent billions of dollars of other people's money on the notion that prevention would be helpful. I believe it to be helpful on an individual basis, and you're far better off getting preventative health care as an individual than you are. But in aggregate, I'm not sure it saves you that much more money. It makes you a healthier person and allows you to be a more productive member of society.
That's valuable, is it not?
I agree with that.
That's a legitimate
Yeah, I
government
agree
purpose.
with it, but
Okay.
you're not going to, but
right.
yeah, I mean.
We obviously have a fundamental disagreement, and you've been very straightforward about it.
Less so than you think.
And I hope I have been too, so thank you.
So to sum this up, are you saying that the number of people in the programs is declining, but the cost per patient is going up? So we're really not saving that much money by the decline in the numbers?
We're not, it's not proportional, right? We're saying because the per member per month has gone up faster than so we're saving less than that. We'll get somebody to draw up a little chart for you on that, because it's a good question.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I on again? Ladies and gentlemen, members of the committee, thank you for inviting me back. I have with me Adam Allison, who is the operator of something called Uwe Castle, which I will let him explain to you why he hasn't changed that name yet. For those of you who don't know him, I'm sorry for you because he's a terrific guy. He is a child care operator from Rensselaer, Indiana, and a family farmer. Before that opportunity, he was a bond trader on Wall Street for 15 years and bought the family farm because he didn't want to raise his children in New York. So he's back in Indiana, and we are thrilled to have him. So he's done a great job of putting this together. I will also tell you that his father-in-law is the Lieutenant Governor of Ohio, Jim Tressel. So interesting question on football Sundays at your house. Okay. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Adam.
Thank you, Secretary Robe. My name is Adam Allison. I'm the Director of the Office of Early Childhood and Out-of-School Learning within FSSA. I come before you and the State Budget Committee with this proposal with regards to SEA 4, the Financial Responsibility and Opportunity Fund, and funding to CCDF vouchers. First off, thank you to the General Assembly in passing SEA 4, specifically the language that created the unique mechanism regarding CCDF voucher funding that was introduced by Senators Mishler and Senator Garden, and in the Senate Appropriations Committee this session. Pursuant to PL 102-2026, the State Budget Agency requests a $200 million general fund augmentation of the Financial Responsibility and Opportunity Growth Fund, or FROG Fund, in the current biennium to provide funding to the Child Care Development Fund, or CCDF voucher program. This program is administered by the Family and Social Services Administration. What we propose for these funds to do is to increase voucher enrollment from a baseline of 43,000 to an estimated 57,000. We will execute this as an office and in an agency through a strategy of set-asides and then priority groups, going through siblings of current voucher holders, then infants, then toddlers, then a portion of the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And within each priority group, be first in, first out. So the set-asides are on the top of this table. We understand as an administration that we want to leverage state dollars to their fullest. These set-asides represent that view. We are having specific set-asides for fostering kinship families, children with special needs, children children in need of services with DCS, homeless applicants, child care workers, and Ivy Tech referrals. Specifically, I'd like to very quickly talk about fostering kinship families. We have worked extensively with our partners in DCS to understand what their demand will be through this program. So those will be set-asides. The priority groups, like I mentioned earlier, we will do in the following order. Siblings of current voucher holders, then we'll go through the infants, then we'll go through toddlers, then we'll go through 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. From an execution perspective, we understand, I want to make a base point before I go into the operational side of it. What we're doing here is we are increasing the demand side of the child care space. And we as an office and as an agency understand that by increasing the amount of CCDF vouchers in the child care space, that we are also cognizant of the operational decisions that child care businesses on the supply side will need to make to increase supply by reopening classrooms, hiring staff, things like that. With that in consideration, we will begin enrollment in pulling applicants off the wait list in late May. We have an operational capacity as an office of 3,000 applications a month, so there will be a ramp-up time on this. We are pairing this with variances for classroom age restrictions, and I think from what's almost, I think, most important is transparency and reporting around this from our perspective is of the utmost importance. We'll be publicly reporting these numbers and how we are executing this program through FSSA's quarterly financial reviews, and then also early learning advisory committee meetings. Okay, so what this graph is, so this is our historical and future CCDF voucher enrollment up to today, and then also with Frog Fund augmentation of the $200 million. So what we're looking at is what can we fund in the future and how do we fund them? So the green box down at the bottom is our current state annual funding from the state general fund. It is approximately $39 million annually. The larger box is our current federal funding. So that's a combination of CCDF funding and then also 30% of TANF funding that the state of Indiana receives. We as an agency transfer that to fund CCDF vouchers currently as well. That is our current funding. That gets us to that 43,000 baseline that I mentioned earlier. What the $200 million proposed augmentation does here is raises that baseline from 43,000 to 57,000. And it does it for 1 year. However, there's something that we all should be cognizant of as well, that from a cash flow perspective, that a CCDF voucher is a set of cash flows with complex embedded optionality that in aggregate creates a multi-year obligation of uncertain length for the state of Indiana. Therefore, the idea here and concept is we are funding this for 1 year, but yes, these will create a multi-year obligation for the state of Indiana. And the expectation from our side is that the early childhood learning line item request for the state fiscal year 28-29 budget will reflect a commitment to maintaining funding for CCDF vouchers and to increase the baseline from $39 million to at least $239 million.
Secretary Rowe.
First of all, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you again for your tremendous leadership on the issue. We're indebted, as are all of these children, to your efforts here. It was terrific, so thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind going back one slide. So, there you go. So the orange box represents about 14,000 kids, but we're now at about 43,000 kids. So we're seeing an attrition rate of about 1,000 kids a month. So over the course of the next year, we are likely to try and remove not just 14, but an additional 12,000. So 26,000 children from a wait list that is approximately 34,000. Yes. Now, it's also important to remember that just like the other wait lists that we have in Indiana, not everybody who we, quote, invite, close quote, off the wait list actually qualifies. The other piece of this that's important to remember is that because this wait list has been in existence for 15 months, or the time that a child would be born and begin walking, there is probably some sense that this child, there's no point in signing up for the wait list. So why would I bother signing up for a wait list that I'll never get off of? Well, we're going to take 26,000 people off that wait list. That will become known quickly, and we may see an increase in the wait list. We simply don't know how human behavior will act here. I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Secretary Rowe, let me ask you this question. So we talk a lot about wait lists and all these different programs. So let's stay focused on CCDF. So of the children on the wait list, is it fair to say that if you were to audit that list, some of those people may not even qualify?
Yes.
So have you thought about doing an audit on that list and then pull out the number that they don't even qualify so it doesn't look so bloated, and get a real number of how many eligible kids are on the wait list?
So we made a decision a year ago when we inherited this problem, from a cost containment perspective to not do that. So there is additional operational costs to do that. And, up to the last, up to the last couple of months ago, this idea of additional funding into this program was something we were not, as an office, looking to do, right? That is something I think through this going forward, we will have a much better handle on what that size of that wait list will be going forward, and also what the real demand is for this program as well going into next budget session.
Senator Kador.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. The 57,000 children on the wait list, is that at the 138% federal poverty line or the 150%?
135%.
So basically, before the 2025 budget, when we used to be at the 150%, the wait list, had we maintained the 150% FPL eligibility, the wait list would be much bigger than 57,000, correct?
I think it would be marginally higher. Most of from a wait list perspective, most of the people that we have on our wait list are actually less than 100% of FPL.
I appreciate that. I've received reports, and I would like to confirm if those reports are accurate or not. Does your office send vouchers for $1 for some of these child care services for children across Indiana?
There's a good reason for those, and I'll follow up with you afterwards.
If you don't mind.
Of course. Yep.
We'll talk, but I think just to record the questions so that we can talk about them. One, whether those $1 vouchers that are being received, are those children counted within the 57,000 wait list, or because that $1 voucher is sent, they are not included in the wait list?
So those are, I think, two things. First, the wait list is approximately at 35,000 right now, and then the $1 vouchers are included in our current enrollment numbers.
Can you say that last part again?
They are included in our current enrollment numbers.
Enrollment numbers. So to translate, if a child is receiving a $1 voucher today, they are excluded from the wait list.
Yes, and I will follow up with you afterwards to make sure that we have so that you have clarity around why those exist.
Thank you. My second question, if we're increasing, I have been fierce champion for this. My Senate Bill 84 from last session, my bill from the 2025 budget session was to fully fund CCDF, fully fund or restore the rates that were cut to providers. Can you help me understand for until the next budget cycle with $200 million that I'm very supportive of, because I've been championing this, with 300 child care centers that closed across Indiana, what do you know today as far as operational capacity of the child care centers and the reimbursement rate that FSSA cut for these providers? Are they going to be able to bring their child care workers back and be able to process the $200 million of vouchers?
Okay, so that's a lot of questions, but I'll try to, and if I forget to answer one of them, I'm confident you'll ask it again. First of all, let's go back to 2023 when FSSA increased the rates by 20%, right, over and above what was then perceived as the cost basis, right? And they did that because, candidly, they had so much money they needed to spend it somewhere. So they spent it on daycare, for better or worse, right? And then they discovered that they were running out of funding, right? And they put a lid on, they started the wait list up. In addition to that, there was an important change made at the beginning of 2025 that we support, but we did not appreciate when we came into office. And that was a change in the mechanisms by which attendance is paid for. So attendance previously had been paid for by, is the child there today? So if the child was ill, the daycare center did not get any money. The daycare center understandably said, well, we found out at 9 o'clock this morning that Billy's not coming. We can't resell that piece. We owe the child care worker for their day because they showed up, so we end up eating that difference. So FSSA said, okay, good point. We'll start paying for the per seat basis regardless of whether or not that child is in attendance. Obviously, there are some rules and regulations around how long they cannot be there, but that is roughly a 10% increase on a per child care basis. So Adam has some numbers in terms of the number that he can share with you in terms of where the capacity is today, where it was dating back to 2020, how it's evolved over time, which we're happy to share.
I appreciate it. And I want to thank both of you on record for your work because in my view, I can critique that this is delayed, and I've been fighting for this for a couple of years. It's a nonpartisan issue from businesses across Indiana to families we've been asking for. Matter of fact, I'll give credit even to the governor's office. When the governor first introduced the budget in 2025, there was funding, I think 194 million or 196 million that was eliminated by or reduced to almost 30-some million by the General Assembly. So I want to acknowledge that there was an intent on documents to move this program forward. I'm happy we got to this point today. It is a little bit late and it has consequences, but you've been transparent with me when we met. Thank you for the information you shared. I have two quick final questions. One, you shared with us before and today the list of priority individuals or children who will receive it, including siblings and so on. So is my assumption correct that the priority is not going to be given for a provider specifically, aside from being certified at level 3 and 4 quality levels, the criteria is going to be focused on the child based on what you presented, not on the geographical region or whether or not there's a child desert in a community or number of children in a region. You're just going based on the children priority of having a sibling and so on. Is that correct?
Yes, within each one of the priority groups, we will be doing first in, first out. And there are potentially other ways of executing that, like you said, Senator. From our perspective, this was the this is the easiest way to explain it, right, and understand. There's obviously other ways we could execute this. This is the one we chose, and I think too, this is on the demand side, right? Correct. These vouchers are on the demand side in the child care market. There is a carryover into the supply side, which then, right, if there is, as these come online, childcare businesses on the supply side will I foresee start to open up classrooms that they had closed, hire staff back that they have laid off over the last 15 months, and so we are looking at that trickle down effect of going of the investment on the demand side of the space and having it flow through into the supply side.
I appreciate it. My final question to either one of you. Secretary, you mentioned, I think, the attrition rate or number for children. Is that attrition related to kids aging, becoming 5 or 6 and moving out of the program? Is that the 1,000 child figure that you cited, or is it for different reasons that we have attrition in the program?
We have attrition for all kinds of reasons. People will leave the state.
Income changes.
Income changes, they're redeterminations, right? So that redetermination rate, the voucher is a 13-month security, right?
But what you're saying is that this 1,000 figure that you showed, is that the net of all of these changes, meaning that the program we should see a decline of 1,000 eligible children or child a month for the next maybe or
flip back to the other
foreseeable future?
Yeah, if you go to that slide, you'll see the decline that occurred there starting in Yeah, December, right. And you see that decline. That decline is that's the natural attrition rate. Without adding anybody, that's what the program looks like.
Does this factor birth rates in Indiana, or do you project? Does it factor birth rate, and it does not? So you're just looking at the attrition based on
So
eligibility?
these are our actual, this is a graph of our actual vouchers that we have on the books of the state of Indiana.
So that could change maybe. There could be a possibility that the attrition number could change in the opposite direction, that you have more people applying and qualifying for the program too, correct?
But Senator, remember, we have, I think in the entire program, we have 3 infants on the program, right? Because it's been a freeze, right? It's one of the reasons why we're adding infants. But so the birth rate per se isn't really in these numbers.
Yeah, I think what we might notice, that a key term that you used earlier, Secretary, was the behavioral issue. And the choices that parents made. Some parents, when the funding and reimbursement went down, they chose either to stay at home maybe and not send their children to a child care center. So potentially there could be a spike at one point that we might see, but we shall see. Thank you both for your comments. I have one question to the chair maybe. First, a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fought fiercely. I bugged you a lot last session on this issue. You went to the Senate floor on, I think it was Senate Bill 4, the augmentation piece was in Senate Bill 4, and you publicly made a comment that you will come back next session, the budget session, maybe with some significant numbers that will show how much the program. My only question is this. So we are less than 60 days out of this last session. The surplus projections didn't change. So what triggered the $200 million now in less than 60 days after session to be added to the program, and why did we not act on it during session?
Well, all we could do during session is pretty much give us the ability to, augment the money, and then it's got to go through Budget Committee. So this is our first Budget Committee since session.
Because of the augmentation piece.
Yeah, so this is our first Budget Committee since session, so this is the earliest we could do it. So the only reason there was a lag is by statute, we have to meet within so many days after we adjourn. And so that's why it's today.
I see. It's because of the mechanism of augmentation. But if it was the direct appropriation, we could have, such as the compliance with the big, beautiful bill, which had a fiscal impact, we could have done it had we chosen to do it direct expenditure rather than augmentation. Is that the difference in the mechanism?
Yeah, that's a true statement.
That's a fair reason?
Yeah, that's a true statement.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
True statement.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Representative Delaney?
Yes, thank you very much. I have a number of questions, mainly based upon what you have said up to this point and on some of the exhibits that you haven't shown with us. But I want to emphasize a couple points. First of all, this $200 million is a one-year program. Is that right? That's for 1 year.
Right, that's all the authority we have, because you guys are going to have a budget
I know you
session.
understand it. I wonder if the public understands.
We view it, I mean, the governor will, in the governor's budget that he submits, he will be including that $200 million for the next biennium.
You expect to see the same. Okay, let's go over this chart here is incredibly helpful if you put a few numbers and a few thoughts to it. So at the bottom, we have a little green chart. That's sort of what we've been doing. $40 million is the entire state contribution to this child care. And then at the top, you've added $200 million for this year, and you're hoping to do it next year. What's this middle thing? It says current federal funding. What's that amount to?
Well, we have 2 sources of federal funding that we use. One is CCDF at the federal level, and the other is TANF. And we have historically, Indiana has historically maxed out the amount of federal funding we can use. There's a limit that they put, that the federal government says that we can do, and we max that out since I was here the first time.
My math from the charts later in your packet is that that number is about $350 million.
Yeah.
The federal funds, okay. The president has suggested, and I heard him say it, that he doesn't want to put any money into preschool daycare. What would happen to your program if that middle section, that $350 million disappeared?
It would be difficult.
It'd be cratered, right? Your program would be essentially gone, would it not?
Well, That would be a decision that the General Assembly had to make.
And is the administration, which you said is committed to this being a sustainable program, are you asking the Republican delegation, the 7 members of Congress from the Republican Party?
Yes.
Are you asking them to not
Yes.
trash childcare?
And the members of the Senate.
I'm giving you a chance to say it publicly, and you did. Thank you. I think that's absolutely
We have
critical.
not, we will.
Well, yeah, they don't need to hear from me. They do need to hear from you. So please go ahead with that. All right. So that's, all of our assumptions fall apart. If that's eliminated, they don't completely fall apart, but they get affected if it's reduced. So that's a matter of degree, and it's out of our control. Okay, that's fair to say. All right. Secondly, there isn't anything we're doing here with this $200 million that we couldn't have done last year if we wanted to in the budget session in 2025. The governor could have asked for this then. He had every right to do that, did he not?
Well, I think you're forgetting the very difficult, and he talked about this earlier in the week, the very difficult kind of 11th hour economic forecast that he received and that the General Assembly received, and they felt compelled to make changes in that to bring the budget into prospectively a better situation based on those assumptions. Blissfully, those assumptions have not borne themselves out.
But we had reserves at the time that could have been applied to this, if that was the priority.
These are choices that are above my pay grade,
Right,
Senator
okay.
Representative.
But I think it's important to know there was a choice made, that this wasn't that the governor couldn't have done something last year. He made a choice to do what he did. He did one thing that I think was very good, which is to protect the people already in the program so they didn't just get kicked out in the middle of the year or whatever. So that's fine, okay. A critical distinction, and I think Mr. Elson can help me with that. We're not putting the $200 million into increasing the rate to the provider. The provider rate is unchanged. So my question is, if I'm a provider who has quit or reduced my load because the rate isn't high enough, why do I want to take on more people for whom the rate is also not high enough? What's the economic incentive to me?
You may. I'll turn that over to Adam in a moment. But remember, they had the 20%, right? And then they had the attendance bump, right? And now we pulled them back by 10%. And we're significantly increasing the commitment to the child care industry by adding $14,000 or $200 million to that. So Adam actually runs child care facilities, so I'll let him answer.
Well, I think what's that old joke we always heard? You know, I'm selling ice cream and I'm losing a nickel on every cone. If I sell more cones, I can get rid of the problem.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Representative.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's a fair question of what to do with this, right? Is it to increase reimbursement rates, or is it to increase enrollment? We made the decision in this proposal to increase the enrollment rates increase enrollment to say, all right, we have this, right? We have these state dollars, right? We want to be good stewards of them. So $200 million, how do we use them? Well, if we increase enrollment, so that benefits, who benefits from that? That's a child, right? That's a family. That is a child care business, right? And because this is a work program, also, right, the employer those parents are going to work at. From a reimbursement rate perspective, those who benefit are only those that are existing child care providers that currently have CCDF vouchers. So we wanted.
Could you say that again? You're saying the only people who can gain from this $200 million are current providers?
Had we done it the other way, it would have been, I apologize.
We're going to give you the money, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think the other thing on this, to the point about reimbursement rates as well, these are cost rate surveys, one. Second, our office is going to undertake beginning of one later this year and execute those new rates in 2027 as well. So we are going to undertake the same process we have in the past here in the very near future.
Do you expect an increase in the rates to the providers?
I do not know what we're going to see here. I look forward to the results.
But you're looking at analyzing what the rate increase would do. As a part
Wait,
of
say
this,
that again. I apologize, Representative. I want to make sure I get your
is
question.
that what you're doing?
What we are going out to the childcare businesses saying, what are your operational expenses, right? And then for the various auspices and types and geographic locations, we're creating a reimbursement rate table. We will start that's accumulating the data on that later this year with execution in 2027.
So you may change the rates, and in some cases may change them upward.
They may go up or they may go down.
Okay. You came up with a very important statistic when you asked a question, I think, by Senator Cadora. Is it true that most of the people who would be eligible for the CCDF vouchers are at or below 100% of the federal poverty level?
That's what we see currently, yes. Currently in our program, yes.
Okay, and so I'm going to ask you about two terms I've learned in the course of this. There's a term copay, which we all understand from medical, and there's a term called overage, which is kind of new to me. So if I'm running a facility, a daycare center, and the state's going to give me, I think, about $148 a week. It had been up over 200, but they're going to give me 148. I'm going to ask the parent, before I accept them, can you put in another 25 or 50 bucks to get me to a level where I can sustain this? Is that not what an operator is going to do?
I think every business, every childcare business in the state of Indiana will approach that differently.
Well, what?
They will approach it differently based on their own business model and their.
But one of the approaches is to say, hey, I can't make it with the state amount, but I can make it with 50 bucks more from you. That's something people do, don't they?
It's big. There's 4,200 childcare providers in the state of Indiana. They will.
Well,
I imagine there are some that do that.
I apparently have a higher impression of the intelligence of our providers than you do. But if they're sitting there wanting to make more money and have a profit, they're certainly going to try to get it. And one of the places to get it from is from the parent.
And I think, and Representative, I think there's another side of it as well, is that parent also has the choice to go to another childcare business location as well.
Yeah, they can go shopping for a place to go to. I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. The perspective, what I'm learning here is the perspective is quite different between the parent, the provider, and the state. And that's the problem here. We don't have exactly the same perspective, although we all claim we want child care. But how we play with that is quite different. So on the next page that you put up there, you said, this is page 6 of your document, you said that the request next year will, quote, reflect a commitment to maintaining funding for these vouchers for preschool. Can I bet on that? Can a child care provider bet on that you're going to, quote, reflect a commitment to maintain funding?
I do not know if they can bet on that, Representative.
You don't know if they can?
I do not know if they can bet on that, no.
Then why is that in here? Why does it say that?
Well, because it's what we will ask the General Assembly as we prepare the budget to recognize that we've made and if this body votes for it, we've made a commitment to creating a long-term, well, he'll tell you what it is. Go ahead.
It's a long-term commitment to around this issue of the state of Indiana, right? And I think, we have to wait and see, right? But I think that, hopefully that we have, when we say things, they can be believed.
Well, I think that's
Director
very
Rainey
important.
has a response to that, so he wants to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize for jumping in here, Representative Delaney, but I think one of the reasons this slide is in here is to make it clear to the committee that we certainly don't take the request for $200 million lightly as an administration. The governor has every intention of including sustainable funding for CCDF vouchers in his budget, but that is something we're still obviously working on. Not dissimilar, Representative Delaney, to the governor including a request for $196 million per year in his recommended budget last year. So can providers bet on this? I think we've got another branch of government we'll look to and work with to make sure that we can continue this funding, but the governor is certainly committed to continuing this.
I want to follow on that because I listened to the governor's press statements the other day, and I wrote down some of the words he said. He said we're going to have a sustained program. That's his word. We're going to give long-term confidence to parents so they can plan on this being there. He even said we have a goal of getting all kids who are eligible to get access. He said that because of our solid financial efforts, we have growing state capacity to do this. But if I got a kid or I got a daycare facility that I own, I'd like to believe those words. And I'd like to believe that's the way the administration is heading. Now, let's talk about the number. We've been through this, an earlier projection you had, Secretary Rube, but we're talking, if you meet those standards, make it sustained, make it long-term, make sure that essentially all who are eligible get in there, you're talking $500, $600, $700 million a year, not 240 or 250. Am I right?
If every member of the wait list were found eligible, the number would be, I believe, $350 million.
As opposed to how much?
200.
As opposed to,
Right.
so that's another 150 if they all were, okay.
In practice, right, we can service 3,000, we can run 3,000 folks a month through, right?
Right.
All right, so we'll be back here in the budget session 3 months, well before we're done running through 26,000 children, and we'll have far more information to make a judgment.
Yeah, and one of the things that'll happen is that the list will change. So if people believe that it's a good thing, it's going to happen, the parents, they'll sign up more likely. If a provider believes it's going to be permanent increase, they're going to go out and encourage people to sign up. They're going to try to find customers. Is that fair?
It's quite likely.
All right, quite likely. So I saw numbers that you provided me that showed us getting in the $500 and $600 million if we got this anywhere near what the governor described, which is that pretty much every eligible kid would get there. And so when I'm asking you about how serious the commitment is, those are the kinds of numbers that I see over the next 3 or 4 budget cycles.
It will be, we will work through it with fiscal prudence as our touchstone.
Right. Well, you got other touchstones too. You got the one about taking care of the kids, right? That's a touchstone too, is it not?
Yes, but
okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm just so far going over what you chose to report. There were some other charts in here that you did not put up that I thought were important. I think they're on pages 15 and 16, as I recall.
Yeah, that was a deck provided just for members.
The public doesn't get my copy.
Well, everything
Don't
that's.
worry about my copy.
Oh, no, Representative Delaney, everything that's in that slide deck is
okay.
At our FSSA quarterly financial reviews. Next one is April 28th.
All right, so I'll be handing those out, but it shows the importance of the role of the federal money. That's my main focus in seeing that is absolutely critical.
It is.
A critical component that I think
So I would say this, I don't believe that we can count on additional federal funding.
Well said. I wish you were wrong.
Well, I think that we're going to be, that over the years, the federal government has made an enormous commitment to fund childcare. We've put in 40 million of what did you come up with, 350?
Right.
And now we're going to put in 240 million. That's a lot.
I hope you're not misleading the president into thinking we're going to do it all by ourselves.
I don't believe the president listens to what I have to say.
Well, we share that.
There's far better things to do with his day than that.
We share that. All right, those are my questions. I think this is one of the most important things we're doing. And this is a step, but only a step with great risk. And it's a long runway. We probably need 7,000 feet to take off on that runway, and we may be 1,000 feet into it. And that's, using the aviation thought. And I'll be flying right behind you. Thank you.
You keep talking about, the promises and commitments and all that. I think that the problem here is one person doesn't have the ability to do this. It's the 150 members of this body that have to make that decision. So it's hard for one person to promise to fix this when they don't have the authority to do it. So you're looking at 150 members that have to make this decision. And when we put this in Senate Bill 4, I made the comment that, this is not a permanent fix. This $200 million is temporary to try to help get us through. But I also mentioned that we would continue to work with these two gentlemen on some possible opportunities in the next budget cycle. So again, I can't sit here and promise that we're going to put billions of dollars in this fund because I got 149 other members that helped make that decision. But I did say when we did Senate Bill 4 that I'll continue to work with these folks and see what we can come up with in 2027.
And we're very appreciative of that, Senator. Thank you.
I just have to say that, we have different perspectives. The parents and the providers, I'm sorry to say this, are not terribly worried about our internal dynamics. They're prone to think of this as potentially a long-term benefit provided by the state of Indiana, and our employers apparently would like that. And so we're going to have to decide whether they're right to expect a long-term program that's a real benefit or not. Our going back and forth is the second year where we've made a, how do I call it, an attempt at putting a Band-Aid on the problem. Last year we said we're not going to kick you out if you're already in the program. That was about to happen. We didn't do that. Now we're saying we're going to try to get some of you back who are on waiting lists. This kind of repeat Band-Aids is not going to drive up the belief of the public or the providers. So you guys got to make up your mind whether this is a benefit you want to provide to our people or not. I think it's that simple.
I would echo Senator Mitchell's comments, which is not the governor's prerogative on his own, right?
By you people, I mean the majority and the governor who sits in the same majority in a different position, okay?
The public, if the public isn't paying attention, we live in a democracy, right? There's a primary election coming up, general election coming up. That's how they can comment and speak with the legislators.
You're urging the public who cares about this to tell us. You're not saying we don't know that they care.
I didn't say that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments, Senator Garten?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Robe, Adam, thanks for being here. I know we've all three spoken a few times about this issue. I've got some macro level questions, some very specific questions, and then just some discussions. I'll start with the easy one first, just for clarity's sake, and I may have missed this, so I apologize. The $200 million, and I understand there's going to be a request in the governor's budget for this. Is that 200 over the biennium or 200 over annually?
200 annually.
Okay, that's what I thought. So what would that bring the total annual spend to?
Well, from 40.
Right.
From 40 million to 240 million in state money.
Right, and then we still have an additional wait list, and is that the 350 million number that you cited, Secretary Robe, that if we funded the entire, everybody in the state, including all on the wait list, it would get us to about 350 on the spend? Is that accurate?
Yes, that assumes that everybody on the wait list is eligible.
Sure.
Which they will not be.
I understand.
It's the worst case scenario.
Sure. And did I hear you correctly say that there's about 26,000 approximately Hoosier children that are in need of some sort of CCDF voucher?
No, the wait list is 35,000. And we believe over the course of the next year, because of if you were kind enough to approve this augmentation, and because of the attrition of the current recipients, that we will be able to invite 26,000 of that 35,000. What I think Representative Delaney and I have pointed out is that there is likely to be a woodwork effect here. If your neighbor signed up 15 months ago and has gotten crickets, right? I had just had a baby, why would I bother? Now, if that baby, if that now toddler all of a sudden comes out, you go, okay, maybe I should sign up. So it's a dynamic situation. We'll know more a year from now.
I think the only thing I'd add is we will, we are from a, cash flow monitoring perspective, we are highly, this is the only thing that matters from our office effectively, right, is managing both this funding and our existing funding streams in this dynamic situation that we will be going down over the next few months.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I know it's been mentioned a few times, talking about eligibility. What are the eligibility requirements for this program?
Initial income eligibility is 135% of FPL, and it is a work program, so one either has to be working or be going to school to qualify initially.
Got it. Thank you. And again, I think I know the answer to this question, but I want to give you an opportunity. I don't want to make an assumption here. What's the purpose? Why should the state do this?
Okay. I didn't think I'd get to answer this question. In 1934 or 33, Frances Perkins, when she was the first female labor secretary under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, created something called the Aid to Dependent Children, which eventually morphed itself into Aid to Families with Dependent Children. And it was a direct cash payment to families, primarily mothers, who were raising their children. By 1995, there was a belief that program had run its course, that we were creating, and I apologize for the phrase, but welfare, that people were having children because they got a cash payment when they had a child. And collectively, the Clinton administration and the House of Representatives, the governor of Wisconsin and the governor of Michigan came together and passed TANF to replace what had become AFDC. And part of TANF was a recognition that we're going to give vouchers to people to do things rather than straight cash money. So you get a voucher. At the time, you got a voucher if you were in a work program, right? You got a voucher if you were for your child care. So we concluded that work was important. We as a society included that work was important, and we should be paying for child care to get people to work. That was a decision that was made in 1996, and perhaps it is time that be revisited. But that's, again, above my pay grade.
I appreciate that. I always appreciate the historical context with which you bring to many of your testimonies. Adam, going back real quick, and I apologize, I should ask you this when you said it. So, and again, just for the general public here, quick math. So 135% FPL, what's that come out to right now?
Well, 43,000 roughly for a family of four.
So who's your family of four making approximately $43,000 a year and have to be working and or going to school?
Correct.
To be eligible for this program?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. You know, this next one's a little philosophical, but I'm interested in your thoughts. Mm-hmm. So what role does supply and demand play in to the pricing and scalability in this space in Indiana?
So I will, the answer is that this is not just a funding problem from the state of Indiana, right? There's also a role that regulatory modernization can play as well. To those ends, you know, we as a state should make it easier for childcare businesses to, one, exist in the state of Indiana, and two, to be created in the state of Indiana. To those ends, first, our office, my office, we have gone through extensive administrative code rewrite internally to pare back our current administrative code regulations to focus on health and safety, reduce administrative burden, and truthfully, make it easier for people that want to be in this space to get into it and stay into it. I expect the first parts of those administrative rule process to be rolling out over the next month within the administrative rule process. And you know, these are things that I didn't truthfully realize this until I got into them more. A lot of the regulations on the administrative side are 20 plus years old, where I think the childcare space has advanced about what we know, what is health and safety, what's required, what is not. And there's an opportunity for us to do that on the administrative side, and we are. I think there's also an opportunity from a statutory code perspective to take a look at that pretty extensively and do a rewrite that focuses on you know, health and safety of kids. I know, you know, conversations that we had last session around ratios, how we do that. You know, And I think the third thing as well is what we are interested in. We also have a pilot program called Microfacility Pilot Program. So what that effectively does is creates a hub and spoke model where administrative functions can be in a hub and the spokes can be smaller child care centers or facilities or places, or they could be classrooms that are overseen by a central location. And the whole point around this is to reduce administrative costs, which lowers the cost for families, which then lowers the cost for families on the demand side, to Representative Delaney's point. But then what it also does is it can attract capital into the space as well, and ideally increase supply, and especially increase supply in places, to Senator Codora's point, where we may not have enough supply currently. So these are all things that we are looking to also advance in the 27 session, and on our side, on the executive branch side, beforehand. I hope that answered your question.
No, that's great.
Senator.
I appreciate the context. It's very helpful. And it's a great segue. I think you used, I wrote it down, you used the verbiage regulatory modernization. That's a good way to say that we're over-regulating. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Okay. So many of you have heard me tout one of the most recent child care studies nationally by the Arc Bridge Institute. If you haven't heard me talk about this, I'm sorry. And just
we have.
We
are aware.
Humor me for just a second, because I think it's important for the general public to know how big of an issue this truly is. So right now, there are 39 states in the nation that do it better than Indiana. Indiana is ranked 40th, and this isn't condemnation of you. This is what you guys inherited in this space. We rank 37th in child to staff ratios. We rank 38th in group size. We do rank 8th in training hours, and we rank 42nd in education requirements. And so when you put those, those values together, we come up with a ranking of 40th. When you compare us to the Midwest states, Illinois is ranked 31st, Ohio's ranked 20th, Michigan's ranked 25th. Wisconsin said, Indiana, hold my beer. They're ranked 43rd. So, when I look around, and I don't have Kentucky's in front of me, but when I look around and I dug into the regulatory space here in Indiana, it's not good. And interestingly enough, the people I got the most pushback from about changing that or modernizing the regulatory space were none other than our providers, which I'm just stubborn enough to ask why. And I'm going to speculate here a little bit, but it's because they have business models that they don't want to change. And they don't want competition in this space because they're really comfortable right now. So who are the three largest child care providers in the state of Indiana? Oh. I don't mean to put you on the spot here. But.
Well, is this a trick question? Do you know them, Senator?
I don't know them for certain.
I apologize. I don't mean to take
No,
light of
it's
it.
okay.
I can find that out for you if I can make sure to get that data for you.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, not a loaded question. I meant that genuinely. I think from some research, I think KinderCare is probably one.
Yes.
They're a big national company. I think they're maybe in all 50 states. I don't know. But I do know their CEO's total compensation is about $6.3 million a year. Early Learning Indiana is a nonprofit. So I would assume that, obviously they don't answer to shareholders. It's about a $400,000 salary a year. I'm not suggesting these people shouldn't be paid for the service they provide, but I am suggesting that when you introduce, when you introduce competition into this space, some of those numbers could be affected. And so I guess I'm going to ask, how committed are we, and I say we because this is going to be a joint project between the General Assembly and the Governor's Office, to pushing back against providers in this space and saying we need to improve, we need to modernize our regulatory environment, and you need to come along with us and do this with us so we don't have to do it to you. What's our commitment?
It goes hand in hand with this ask that we come to you today. It is, there's a need in the state of Indiana to be creative from a business model perspective, and a big part of that is the regulatory space, and to allow for flexibility within the child care space to have new and creative business models around what it can be.
So one of the, I don't know if you've seen the chart that looks at the child care facility churn. It's a fairly big churn, right? The people are in business for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and then they're out of it, and then they go someplace else and start something else. So it's you're right, there are larger ones, but it goes,
Sure. Yep.
it's got a long tail on it.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think the case, at least it's been made in other spaces that I think would apply here, is your larger companies have scalability, right? At least that's what they would claim. I'm not so sure in this space that translates, though, for that very reason that you just said. Right. And so I guess I'm having a hard time reconciling that.
It's not the all fixed cost company, right? You know, there's a step function. Every time you add 6 or 7 more kids, you got to add more staff. You got to,
sure.
I mean, it's not a very financially leverageable nor AI oriented. AI is probably not going to take your job.
I will concur with Secretary Robe on that one. At the end of the day, what's happening here, right? We're talking about children, right? And health and safety is key. And, the business, right? The business owners that operate and do the work every day here on this, they take that risk willingly every day as well.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, and I'll close here, Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving me so much time. To that point, right, I mean, I think that's where we, the General Assembly, get it wrong a lot of times. In the name of health and safety, we overregulate, and maybe we consciously make that decision. I'd like to think we do. But then we find ourselves in these scenarios where the unintended consequences of overregulation is, what about the health and safety of the kids on the wait list, not in a safe facility, not in a program? And I asked some of our providers that, and I'm paraphrasing, I got a shoulder shrug. And so those kids haven't been considered in this. And that's, I guess, my frustration with all this. When we talk about deregulating, we are not, or we haven't at least, taken into account the kids that are in those unsafe situations now.
Excellent point.
And so I would just urge, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, as we look at this and we look at deregulation, we need to be very honest with ourselves and not just, and I guess push back against the notion that we're trading health and safety if we deregulate, because I don't think that's always the case. So, Adam, thank you for what you're doing in this space. I've got, you're wildly competent and overqualified. I'm glad you're here and look forward to working with you guys on this.
Yes, same here.
Thank you.
It's our unicorn.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, next up. Indiana Economic Development Corporation. Should be a real quick one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I think I've got 2 items here for you. The first one being some policy updates to 21 fund policies. The IEDC is bringing forward investment policies for the 21st Century Research and Technology Fund, commonly referred to as the 21 Fund. The 21 Fund provides grants and loans to support proposals that advance economic development across Indiana. It is capitalized through General Assembly appropriations and repayments from prior loans. Consistent with statutory requirements, these investment policies are being presented to the committee for review today. The policies were reviewed and unanimously approved by the IEDC Board of Directors at its most recent March 18th meeting. These new policies cover small business innovation vouchers, SBIR, STTR matching grants, Indiana Innovation Capital Program, Strategic Growth Program Pilot, and the Indiana Accelerator Program. That's all that I have on that one.
Questions from the committee? Senator Cadora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate, good to see you again.
Thanks,
and I appreciate our last meeting that we had. So I am always critical of the IEDC. It's not directed at you because it's not fair, because you've been with the agency for how long?
It's about 4.5, 5 months now.
5 months. And I've been critical of the agency for the last 3 to 4 years. So with the most love and respect, please do not take my comments as directed at you. These are going to be focused on the policies that I'm looking at and my frustration with the IEDC institution and the direction that for the last 3 to 4 years got us to where we are. So I'm specifically looking at the policies. In the presentation or in one of the documents, IEDC mentioned that I'm looking at the Indiana Small Business Strategic Growth Program Policy.
And I don't have that one in front of me, but
I'll refer the language that I'm referring to, so
Sure.
that this way you can. So in that document, it references that Indiana small businesses are the backbone of our economy, employing more than 40% of Hoosiers in 2025. Same document, under the funding allocation, it is $5 million for allocation for the small business community. Then I look at the other policy document, which is this presentation from IEDC that talks about the SBIR, the STTR. On March 18, the IEDC board approved the allocation of $15 million of the Innovation Capital Program. Who's getting the $15 million that were approved by the board on March 18th?
I would have to look at that, and I understand and appreciate your question. We do have some subject matter experts that are here with us, and so I think if we want to look at where the specific investments go, unless you know the answer to that question, Senator Kadora.
From public information, I think I do, and if you can correct me, I will be more than happy to correct my information. So the governor a few days ago announced a $15 million investment in Iron Nation, correct?
Yes.
Is that the same $15 million that is referenced that was approved by the board?
It very well could be. I think that that's possible.
So help me understand, if the board approved it on March 18th, and almost 3 weeks later, the governor makes the announcement, was the deal being cooked months before even the board approved the dollars, or were you guys way too quick that in a matter of 3 weeks, you were able to secure a deal to grant the $15 million?
Senator Kadora, I'm trying to sort of just work through your math on this.
Sure.
And again, I think that I'm not sure that that's contemplated in the policy updates that we have today, because these policy updates are sort of new policies that move their way through that. These processes are looking for the investment opportunities. Then we go to the board for the approval of those opportunities. And I think that is the final level of approval on that movement of funds.
I think, well, to be clear, so that I'm not, I'm not setting up here for failure or anything. I'm just like really trying to triangulate the information in the packet that I received for today's budget committee meeting. So I received this presentation, and this presentation shows that on March 18th, IEDC Board of Directors approved an allocation of $15 million. The governor announces $15 million to Iron Nation 3 weeks later, roughly speaking. Was the deal done with these companies within 3 weeks from the day that the board approved it, or were these discussions taking place for months before even the board approved the allocation?
We absolutely are having discussions before we take it to the board. The board is the final approver on these actions, similar to the way that we would do a lot of our other incentives and programs that require board approval. And so I would say it is certainly not final, because it would require that final step of approval to become final. But we would have discussions about different activities that would make sense for the state as an agency.
And to be specific, were discussions taking place with these entities specifically and the CEOs of these entities specifically about the money they will receive before even the board approved the allocation?
I would need to get back to you on a chronological timeline. I've had different activities, but I understand the question, and I think that it would be consistent with our normal practices to have discussions about the possible uses of funds, and then once we've done our due diligence and our vetting, to have conversations about
And thank you for that, because my concern, normally the way that things would work for transparency with an agency that had a forensics audit about conflicts of interest and deal with the Three Kings and $180 million that were funneled to LLCs and DBAs, one LLC with 13 DBAs. The question is, how can within 3 weeks an agency approve $15 million for foreign companies when the same policy submitted to this committee for Hoosier businesses is $5 million allocation? So help me reconcile $5 million for Hoosier businesses and $15 million for foreign companies.
I think there are a couple of different things that work through there. First, obviously, before we're seeking approval for something from our board, we would want to make sure that it was a worthwhile investment. But second, I don't think that I would characterize, in fact, I'm sure that I wouldn't characterize this as $15 million for foreign companies. Again, we're leveraging private investment, but this will go to businesses in Indiana that are creating, high-wage, innovative, high-tech jobs within Indiana. So really excited about the outcomes from that. But again, they will be Hoosier small businesses by the time that they're receiving funding.
And the reason I say that, because I'm going off of the governor's announcement on the $15 million specifically that the IEDC is putting in, that ties with this presentation that we're looking at today. So my question is, the announcement basically did not say these are Hoosier companies. It said these are foreign companies, and they will be working in the tech sector. And my concern, and I will bring it home why I'm concerned about that in a minute. My concern is that, especially in a day when data security is a concern, and you'll have companies dabbling with collaborations with our health systems, our universities, and sensitive infrastructure in Indiana. Do we even have data privacy contracts with these foreign companies to protect Hoosiers' data from being used by foreign companies?
Senator Codora, I think there are a lot of questions underneath that. Clearly, we're going to protect, as responsible Hoosier data, it's an obligation that we would have to move through this. Right. But the goal, again, is to provide a way for high-tech firms to really move to Indiana, to develop businesses here, to put Hoosiers to work, and to add to our capital stack. And I'm really excited about doing that. We'll do that responsibly and in accordance with the policies of the board.
And I think you would appreciate my skepticism since there's a history of 3 to 4 years of forensics audit. So I have to be direct in my questions about these things. So are we saying that we don't have a tech sector in Indiana that is worth investing in, that we have to bring startups from a foreign nation to create, because the announcement was not Hoosier jobs. And I'm not aware, are you aware that these companies have headquarters in Indiana currently?
I mean, there are some activities. When you say headquarters, I think we'd have to look more at that. But again, the hope is that we're spurring a lot of interest in locations within Indiana, in the movement of companies and resources and employees here. That's the exciting portion about this. And so that's ultimately the goal of the program.
All for business development, all for creating new jobs, all for creating. But when I look at 2 documents submitted to this committee, one of them talks about for local Hoosier businesses, they get an allocation by IADC for $5 million. And a governor announces $15 million for foreign companies. I find this contradicting. I would have loved to see the opposite, that we're investing in, entrepreneurship that is made within India. We have Purdue, we have IU, we have great institutions and startups that we can invest in.
And Senator Codora, there are investments in those institutions and far more institutions outside of those, well beyond the $5 million that you're referencing. So you're comparing the most recent allocation to the $15 million, which represents the total, and we're leveraging that to create a fund of $50 or $60 million. But that $5 million is additive to what we're already investing.
So is the policy that references the $5 million, is that policy going to change annually to change the $5 million allocation? Because the way I read it, this is a capped allocation of $15 million for this grant. It's a capped allocation of $5 million. So are you suggesting that the policy is going to be revised annually to raise the ceiling for these investments? Meaning that the $5 million for Hoosier businesses could maybe next year be updated in this policy to be 15, 20, 30 million?
I would not be able to predetermine that. I mean, our goal would be to use the funds that are available to us and leverage them in a way that would most benefit Indiana's economy. Right now, that represents our decisions, our recommendations adopted by boards and through other processes of what the next logical step is forward. But absolutely, if we see ways that we can invest more money that would yield a positive return on investment in a fiscally responsible way, we'll do that, and we would come at those policies. And so absolutely, you could count on us doing that if the funds are available, and we can make the argument that that's what needs to happen.
I use the preamble, and I sincerely say it from the deepest place in my heart. I respect you personally. I've worked first with you at DWD many years ago, and it's not directed at you. But I can't buy you can count on us, because it's about the institution. There's history there. So here's my question. The $15 million specifically that I'm questioning, you mentioned a key term, which is the return on investment. Can you share with us today the number of jobs that will be created, and by what year 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, will we get the money that we invested?
I would love to have that as a separate discussion. I would want to include the subject matter experts within the room when we do it. But this is a situation where we're leveraging sort of private investment, the proven track records of being able to deliver on this. The goal on this, obviously, is to ultimately end up in a repaid loan and to see those positive return on investments. But we don't know those today, right? The goal is to set in place a process that allows us to incentivize those as we see them to return dividends to Hoosier taxpayers.
So I thought when I first joined the General Assembly almost 5 years ago, and we met with earlier leadership, I thought there was a matrix that was used before any contract or deal is signed, that the return on investment analysis, the number of jobs, capital investments, all of that has to be predetermined before money is allocated. So from what you just said, we don't know the $15 million. We don't know how many jobs will be created. We don't know, which locations there will be in Indiana, or is that private confidential information that you are unable to share?
If we have that data and I can share it, I'd certainly be willing to. I'm not familiar quite enough to know whether that is out there, but on this investment, again, I think this is more how do we leverage state dollars in a smart way, or how do we use our dollars to leverage private investment that is likely to yield positive returns. And again, we're set up and structured to do that. I think it's a great opportunity, again, a really high-tech sector in Israel that I think that we can take advantage of, looking for places to locate in the United States. Those are going to the coasts. Those are going to New York. I think that we have the opportunity to capitalize on
I
some of
appreciate,
those
one of my
investments.
2 masters is in computer science, so I'm all in for the tech sector. So that's not my concern. I think I'm just reviewing these policies. What my constituents are telling me, what I'm hearing, I'm getting the hundreds of messages at a time when 2,500 Hoosier workers have been locked out by BP, a foreign company, and out of the 2,500, 800 have been locked out by 800 by BP, about 1,900 to 2,000 by NIPSCO. And we just went through an announcement of $15 million for foreign companies when one foreign, this is my point, bringing it home, as I said earlier, why would we, the governor traveled to the north side, and I appreciated his visit. He made a public statement that they deserve a fair contract. For almost now more than 2 weeks, I visited with them. These workers structured a food pantry in one of their facilities to support these families. I was on the street in 30-degree weather where a 12-year-old was standing with her dad holding signs, knowing that her dad is unemployed. So my question is, when we say count on me as IEDC, and I hear an investment of $15 million and 2,500 Hoosier jobs currently existing in the state of Indiana, one by a foreign company, abusing our workers, where is the line of saying Indiana first before anybody else?
Senator Cordero, a couple of things there. First of all, I always appreciate the questions. And I don't know if I use the phrasing count on us. What I'm telling you is what my absolute intention is as we go forward with this is to make smart decisions on behalf of Hoosiers and to try to yield positive economic development returns. The funds that we're talking about here are coming from the 21 fund that is used for this purpose. I think that to the extent that we wanted to have a discussion statewide about what we would do for relief in those other scenarios, I'm not sure we would be the appropriate people to take part in that. But I think that's a worthwhile discussion. I don't think that you're saying that the 21 fund would be used to cover that scenario.
No, not that specific fund, but what I'm saying when I'm looking at the IEDC documents that were submitted, including investing in small businesses, investing in the tech sector, looking at the presentation that talked about the companies that received EDGE credits, you are the institution, the agency within the state government to bring businesses and jobs. And I think the priority should be Indiana first, regardless what the tools are. And my point is that when I ask, for 4 years, I've been asking the same questions. I work today, my professional job, I work in finance. I served as the former city controller for Indianapolis, so I like to ask finance questions. I would never sign a deal without knowing how many jobs are created, what is the return on investment, by what X or Y year we will receive the investment, the return on investment for the dollars that we're putting, and what are the priorities. If I was the city controller of Indianapolis, and I have an Indianapolis-based business that has 500 employees about to leave Indianapolis, I might give them a more priority than attracting a business that is headquartered in Michigan or Chicago, or Illinois, or somewhere else. So I find it extremely difficult and frustrating to, when I look at these policies created by IEDC telling us, please trust us, we will bring jobs, and I'm getting frustrated with Hoosiers in our state losing their jobs, not being, that's one story. And second, almost 100,000 jobs currently open, I think, in the state of Indiana that we can't fill. So, and the return on investment analysis that we never received on these deals does not even factor local incentives such as property tax abatements. So we never actually end up, at least for legislators, at least for me, I don't know if other legislators receive it, we can't see the full comprehensive analysis of return on investment. So when we are asked today as a committee to approve or to review a policy for the IEDC, I can't help but think about the comprehensive institution, the trust in the institution, and its ability to actually make the right decisions of investing in Indiana first. I know that's a lot to say in this committee, but I'll ask you one more question. The governor also announced a $1 billion investment over the next decade. The governor's office is termed by 2 terms, 8 years. He won't be here by the end of this announcement. what is the source of funding that he's speaking about? Since we, as my colleague Senator Mishler said, it takes 150 people to decide on something. So what source of funding is he speaking about?
Yeah, Senator Cordero, that's a good question. And I mean, a couple of things here. Again, since the start of my time at the agency and the start of the administration, the focus has been on our agency securing high-wage jobs for Hoosiers. And we've adjusted a lot of our policies, including the use of our credits, to push wages higher. Sort of the incentives per job have pushed down. And the ultimate goal of economic development is to return in opportunities for Hoosiers. This $1 billion investment over the next decade largely is a shift of really a target around the use of the incentive dollars that have been appropriated to us to push those towards ag and life sciences, really statewide, to increase or to take advantage of the assets that we have in that industry. And sort of Indiana has picked up a lot of momentum in this. We've got world-class companies that are located in central Indiana and around the state. And so that $1 billion is really a target of the way that we'll use those investments to grow Indiana's economy. Really happy here that CERTA has sort of stepped up to be the first region to really talk about their strategic plan aimed at a particular sector. And so all 9 counties, I think there's something like 32 mayors that have gotten together and said, we'd like to focus here. And so our goal as we move towards more region-led, region-focused economic development is to provide the state support that's necessary to help them reach their goals. And so that $1 billion is really an aspirational goal, but something that we intend to execute on, and frankly is only part of the equation, because I think we'd like to do the other things that we need to do to support them as they try to reach ambitious goals for delivering jobs for Hoosiers.
Generally, I'm very supportive of regional development. I'm not arguing the merits of the policy. I'm talking about the funding source. So the $1 billion, did the governor or IEDC identify the funding source on an annual basis or every biennium budget? Is it general fund dollars? Is it private dollars mixed with public dollars?
Yeah, Senator Cordero, this is, and we talk about this a little bit on my next agenda item.
Okay.
But so each year we have the availability of $300 million that we can certify in credits that are used under our incentive pool. And so I think the best way for you to think about this is that if you take that $300 million and you project that forward, and I'd love to have a discussion about that $300 million and the cap that currently exists on that. But if you look at that going forward over 10 years, you're talking about a $3 billion pool of funds. And again, our goal is to say that we'd like to see $1 billion of those funds go to high-wage jobs in ag and life sciences and really take advantage of the resources.
So I think what you're suggesting, is it reasonable and fair to say what you're saying is out of the existing appropriations in the $300 million over the next decade, which would add up potentially, if it stays budgeted, up to $3 billion of opportunities for investments. Is that a reasonable statement?
I would, the only thing that I hesitate with is the use of the word appropriations, because this is an allowance against a future credit certification. And I think that the important point on that is that that is only a fractional return of the withholdings or the income tax that's generated by those. And so the only way that we get to that $1 billion is if we're returning significantly more than that in terms of income taxes.
In the budget, I think it's what we refer to in the General Assembly as an outside act, because these are not general fund dollars. You reduce it from the future revenues of the state of Indiana.
It would be a potential reduction in future revenues, but again, because they're performance-based, they only are they're only ever realized if the actual dollars that are generated are greater than the amounts of that credit.
So what's new in the governor's announcement if we will continue to use the same existing dollars that we include?
It's a good question, and it is the very intentional effort, the effort really led by this Central Indiana focus on saying we're aligned that this is what we want to go after, and the state signaled that we're going to support that with a significant portion of what we're doing here. We're still looking and using, and you did talk about sort of this matrix or what we use to make decisions on investments. That is more formulaic, and we do have a better understanding of what incentives are appropriate in which scenario. But this is the state indicating its support for a region-led strategy around where their growth is going to come from.
Can you please follow up after committee, if you have this information, for the $15 million investment that we discussed earlier? If you can send me the return on investment analysis, unless it's confidential, and how many jobs, locations, wage average, if you can follow up with that information, if you don't mind.
I will absolutely get you the best quality information that I can about that 15 million.
I appreciate it. Yep. My final thought and question to you that relates to these policies, since this committee is reviewing these policies. So the reason you hear my my skepticism about the institution of IEDC when I review policies in this committee. Because before, I supported the governor when he launched an investigation into IEDC. That was before your time. You inherited this, and I appreciate that you're trying to fix the agency and move it forward. So you have nothing to do to be blamed for what happened before. But there were significant findings in that audit. And I think in October of last year, that audit was referred to the Inspector General, correct? Do you recall any?
I know that it has been referred to the appropriate parties.
Has there been any recommendations from the Inspector General's office to IEDC on these policies or any other policies that we must consider in response to the material weaknesses to the findings of the audit, including conflicts of interest and money flowing left and right?
So we're obviously not running new policies through them. And again, these are new policies. These are additive to the current structure. What you're looking at aren't redlined policy changes. They're new policies. But I would say of the 30 findings that were related to the IEDC, 16 of those are completed, and everything else simply it's necessary that we're going to have more time to implement those. But we've absolutely tightened things like travel policies, conflict of interest policies, and we are still committed to implementing all of the findings that apply to the IEDC and working with our partners as well.
But as of today, you have not received any specific feedback from the Inspector General on any, in light of the financial audit that took place?
About the policies that are in front of you today, we didn't circulate those and ask for implementation. I would say that they're very consistent with what we're hearing from that. We want to make sure that any of our investment policies apply and actually benefit Hoosiers, and that's the goal.
And I will read to you some, because you might not have this document in front of you. This is a sample of these policies that we're reviewing today. So for example, if you look at the Indiana Commerce Vertical Accelerator Program policy, the language that gives me hesitation based on previous experiences, based on the audit, based on the referral to the Inspector General, you look at the second page on governance and oversight, which was one of the findings of weaknesses within IEDC. And it said the Indiana Economic Development Corporation Entrepreneurship and Small Business Department will be tasked with the oversight of selected vendors. That was one of the problems in the audit as far as the conflict of interest between the Three Kings and others and their selection process. And then it goes on to the bottom of the page and it reads, under the program participation selection, please pay attention to the language that's in the policy. Should the Indiana Economic Development Corporation be the sole source of funding for an accelerator program in Indiana, Indiana Economic Development Corporation staff shall, if desired, have the opportunity to review and or select participants in the program prior to official selection of companies into said program by the program organizer. There's language that places trust back with an IEDC to make significant decisions on funding and selections. And I know there's a board, I know the governor chairs the board, and there were changes to the board. But I have not seen fixes to the audit from last time. I have not seen findings or follow-up from the Inspector General's office. And on my way here today, people are still emailing my office and texting and sending messages saying, what happened to the $180 million that were funneled to LLCs through the Three Kings? Are we getting any of those back? Literally, one conservative Republican sent me a message saying, shut down the IEDC. Like literally, Indiana First Agenda. So how do you respond to all of these claims that these policies are the same old policies, even though the document is new, but we're placing trust back in the same agency that had deficiencies and weaknesses?
So, Senator Codora, a couple of things there. Again, I realize there are a lot of people with differing views about all the topics that we discuss in here, and economic development is one of those. Of the findings that were made, we've implemented over half of them, and we will be implementing all of them. It is only time that has limited us from being at all. But this policy that you're looking at is new. It is additive. So we are replacing something that had no policy. So what you're seeing is a step forward towards transparency and an openness around the way that we're investing in these policies. And we'll continue to have discussions about how we can improve both transparency and all of our activities, not just investments, but the return on investment for the activities that the IEDC is doing. And so I'm happy to hear your feedback, happy to hear feedback from your constituents. Our goal here is to carry out the missions of the statute in line with the governor's wishes, and we'll do that to the best of our ability. And so I think what you're looking at today is a step towards transparency. You may think it doesn't go far enough, but it's ahead of where we were before this policy was adopted.
I'll conclude by saying this. As I said in my opening remarks, you've been only in your role for 4 months and a half. And I'm very clear and being respectful of my colleagues, even in the executive branch. You're a colleague who's entrusted with a different responsibility. But we sometimes wear different hats. And from the seat that I'm in today, with the constituents that I represent, with Hoosiers across Indiana, with the 2,500 workers that I visited their locations, spoke with their families, and spent time with them, it's extremely difficult to isolate the history and the context of how we arrived before your arrival to the IEDC with this moment of where the IEDC is. I can trust you personally. I will pray for your success because your success is the success of the agency and the state and Hoosiers. But when we keep talking about affordability, electric bills, we talk about property taxes, we talk about childcare, we were just talking about it, and then the governor announces $1 billion here, $15 million there, visits 20 locations of locked out workers, and they can't even till today, they are out of employment. 2,500 Hoosier workers with their kids, their spouses, and their loved ones. If I was anywhere near the governor's office, I would call for an emergency meeting for every agency from IDEM to inspect BP's, whatever, violations of state law. IEDC, incentives. What are you doing on the incentives? I would be calling on every state OMB, every agency to look at how, I would ask the governor to call the CEOs of these companies, because this to me is the core of what IEDC exists for. Create jobs, retain jobs, ensure that corporations in Indiana do not abuse Hoosier workers. So this is not an isolated topic that I'm just airing my grievances of something happening somewhere in Indiana. This is directed at IEDC to lead in this moment of helping with these issues. So I would appreciate you if you take that back to your leadership team, to the governor's office, and set a high priority on doing everything in your capacity to restore these 2,500 jobs before we spend one more penny on any company, whether foreign company or out of Indiana company. I want to see 100% investments in local jobs and local businesses. That's my feeling. That's my thoughts. These are my thoughts. That's my framing of the issue based on 4 years of struggles with IEDC. So I appreciate your patience, and I want to reiterate, none of that was directed at you. This is the role that we play as legislators advocating for the best interest of our constituents. So thank you for your patience with me, and I hope you can take that message back and help us reform things.
Thank you, Senator Kador. And I'd just remind you, Indiana's workforce is at about 3.4 million, and our job every day is to work to make sure that we're creating new opportunities for a lot of those Hoosiers to work. I respect your position on that. I think there are a lot of activities that across our agencies that we are taking in a number of these scenarios. But I appreciate your feedback and your kind words, and we'll continue to work towards transparency.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Next will be the tax credits.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the State Budget Committee. The IEDC is bringing for review tax credit awards from February 1st to March 26th, 2026, totaling approximately $21 million. Sorry. Thank you. These awards are broken down by individual award and by county and total incentives offered per tax credit. These awards span 13 counties and comprise of 4 different types of awards. All awards are performance-based incentives, and this is a point that I made earlier, meaning the IEDC will not certify the credits unless the company meets their obligations. This is the first time that we're coming to Budget Committee to talk about it in this direction. The last time that I spoke with you, I think it was last fall, I missed a meeting or two, we were talking about awards at the certification phase. And I think that what we quickly learned through that process is that that was a little bit less interesting because we were bringing to you certifications that had already been earned, oftentimes based on awards that had been offered as much as a decade ago. This is the thing that I feel like has been the hardest for me to wrap my head around since being involved with these. But Indiana's economic development incentives are overwhelmingly, our primary tools and the tools that we're using today are performance-based. And so we're only ever facing these obligations if the activity that we incentivized came to be true. And so a lot of times the headline on one of these will be, company XYZ locates in Indiana, $12 million in incentives. But those incentives are only ever realized if the actual head count that is under the initial contracted amount and the tax revenues generated from those are there. And then through credit, we're passing back a fractional portion of that. So while I think that this is probably a more interesting and appropriate stage for you to see and review these at, what I would suggest to you is that by a historical run rate, we're likely actually over to see about 70% of those be materialized. And so we're offering these today. We've gone through the approval process. But so, for example, even on these larger ones where you see the EDGE credits on $5 million, again, I think there sometimes is the impression that, that we're either writing a check or taking the cash over there at the time that that contract is entered. That $5 million will only ever exist if we've collected withholdings and verified headcount of those job creations, and then we will certify, which is what you had seen previously, we will certify credits based on that proof. And what they generally would be, and the EDGE credits, our primary tool, the one that we're using most often, will be a fractional return of the increase in withholdings that have been generated by that business activity. I think it's just a really important thing to talk through. This is why, and we'll have this discussion later, but right now, the credit cap that applies, the $300 million credit cap, today, we'll certify credits this year based on awards that were made in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and we're trying to forecast as we make these awards today the utilization against those cap in future years. And on the EDGE credit side of things, I don't think this is controversial, we're effectively saying this is as much growth as we would be willing to incentivize under this credit pool. It's a little different when you look at things like the RTC credits you have up here. Those are credits that are awarded based on investments, certified investments. So still, we've incentivized the activity. They cannot claim that credit until we see the investment that we want. But I would suggest that a cap on RTC probably is appropriate and necessary. On EDGE, I think that's a slightly different analysis, but these are the credits here ahead of you. I think that it was just those two slides.
Any questions?
I have one question, Mr. Chair.
Senator Gador?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an easier question, but it tags along the previous ones. So I'm looking at the same slide that you presented. This is a good example of what I was saying earlier. So those have already been approved, correct?
These have been
Certified.
approved, yes. Yes.
All right. So, and the total amount for those, if I'm looking at the bottom for all of those, is the 21 total credit awards by incentive, the different types of incentives, $21.13 million. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is the offers that we have now run through the process. So, yes.
So my only question is this. How many, this is a great example because now there's a deal signed, certified, and given. How many jobs will be retained by this? Or what was the goal, the return on investment for Hoosiers for $21 million?
I would love to have that here, and that actually was presented to our IEDC board, but we're absolutely doing that in this case because that is tied to the offer that we can do.
Correct.
So we've created the application, we understand the job commitments, and again, if they don't meet those commitments, this amount starts
Excellent.
to be reduced.
Can you please send me an email with what the board approved as far as the analysis that shows the jobs created for those? You just mentioned that the board reviewed that information, correct?
We present that to the board.
You present it to the board, so the agency, the staff has that information.
And that is all on the transparency portal as well.
So I can find the number of jobs and return on investment on the portal.
I believe so, because it would be part of the amount, or the contracted amount. But I will confirm that, and we can provide that either way. But that is part of every single one of these that you're seeing up here goes through, it's an application for incentive. We do have, I mean, there's the slide here on the prior page that talks through this, but on that place, or on the second one where it says the IEDC evaluates the application for incentives and conducts a cost-benefit analysis, we are looking at jobs every time.
One simple recommendation would be maybe in the future, since you have that helpful information here, there's some space at the bottom of the page, maybe one single block that for these $21 million commitments, here's the number of job and return on investment from the transparency portal.
And
one
this is
recommendation.
I'm sorry, Senator Gador, I think this is the first time that we're presenting this way, and so your feedback on what it is that you would like to see is well taken, and we'll see what we can do.
And that's progress, because in the past, we did not even get a listing of the company, so I appreciate you for doing that. I think this is a good first step, and adding the number of jobs that are either retained or created would be very helpful.
And I'll make a quick point. I know that we're probably ready to move through. I will say that at our board meeting, we now have a commitment to show every offer that we've made in the prior quarter, where in the past it was only those over a certain amount. We really want to be able to show sort of all of these activities and all of the businesses that we're incentivizing. And so that was another step that we've taken towards trying to make sure that people can understand that the incentives and the dollars that we're using are committed to increasing wages and increasing employment in Indiana.
So one thing I want to clear is, okay, so these are awarded, okay? So as we know, many of these companies don't hit the mark. So they don't get the total award. So if they hit the mark, then they're certified. So what percentage, and then if they're not certified, if they didn't hit the mark, then they stay they're not used. So they can be used elsewhere after a certain amount of time. So they just kind of recycle through. What percentage of these that you awarded do you feel are actually earned and certified in the end?
So our historical run rate has been at about 70%. This is really challenging for us, and we're working on potential data exchanges across other state agencies so that we can keep track of this more in real time. But it is incredibly hard for me even today to know the amount that we will certify next year. We know from our CRM and from the tool we have what we've contracted, what we're potentially liable for next year. But because we don't get sort of monthly updates, we wait until we get that request for certification. This is a challenging program to manage. And for us and the way that we look at this, again, I think largely as long as we can find qualifying investments, we really want to push towards that $300 million. I mean, again, they've got to be good wages, and they've got to make sense for Indiana, and all those things have to be there. But we'd like to use this. RTC, if we issue an RTC credit, generally we're going to see that hit against our cap more quickly because the tax credit is earned based on the investment itself. So usually we're going to see that within 1 or 2 years. But if we were to do a deal today, sort of a $30 million edge credit, we would really divide that out over 10 years and we would build that into our CRM. So we would assume about $3 million per year for that company would hit the cap. The realization has been historically about 70%. And so that's why, I like that we've moved this up to the offer phase, but the credit cap sits at $300 million means I'm trying to manage to agreements that were made, again, a decade ago, some of them last year, but almost nothing that we're doing today is hitting today. It's going to be hitting in the future. And this is why I still think that there's some work to do. That cap, as you know, Senator Mishler, that cap did not exist at the creation of edge credits. It effectively was unlimited. I think that there was some question about what potential liability was there, but I would still suggest that because we're only returning a fractional amount of the increased withholdings that have been generated by that activity, the only way that we're going to be liable, we literally take the money first, we hold it, and then they can claim a credit against a fraction of those dollars. And we can adjust the amount of that based on the quality of the investment, how much we think Indiana is going to need to award that. I think the most we've ever seen would be like an 80% edge credit. And so we're still coming out ahead in those scenarios.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. McGough, Indiana Finance Authority.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm Jim McGough, and here today on behalf of the Indiana Finance Authority to request the Budget Committee's review of the Second Amendment to the Indiana Toll Road lease. And I'll try to be brief. I know it's late in the day. This first slide just shows the history. We entered into the lease in 2006. It's been amended one time, and the operator will continue to manage the operations and maintenance, the upgrades, as well as reimbursement of law enforcement on the road. This is a summary of the proposed Second Amendment. It contemplates a payment by the concessionaire of $700 million to be paid over 3 years, $300 million at 30 days within us signing the lease, and then $200 million, 24 months, and then 12 months, and then $200 million, 24 months after the signing of the amendment. In addition to the $700 million to be paid, the concessionaire will commit to an additional $25 million in capital enhancement, primarily focused on travel plazas and truck parking capacity. And then also a provision that the state would have the opportunity to share and any upside should the concessionaire recoup the $700 million of additional payment to the state of Indiana. There's a formula that will be reviewed each year to analyze the revenues that have been produced because of the modifications of the lease and at a future date, should those revenues exceed the $700 million, then the state would share on the upside. The modifications to the lease that are being agreed to, there is no upfront toll increase, but the frequency of the increases will go to semi-annual rather than annual increases, and it will be for all vehicles. In addition to that, the floor will be increased from 2% to 3%, and I've included an example of what that would look like on the bottom of that last bullet. There we go. This slide summarizes in more detail what the concessionaire plans to do with the additional investment in the road. As you can see, it's focused on the service plazas and the truck parking, increase of overnight truck parking spaces. And then the middle bullet summarizes what's already been done to the road. Over $1 billion has been invested. And we do review annual summaries or reviews of the road to make sure that the pavement quality and bridge quality are kept up to NDOT standards. This slide depicts where our toll rates will rank compared to comparable toll roads, and this is after the July 1st, 2026 toll increase. So you can see we're near the bottom of this particular graph and where the current rates are for automobile and heavy vehicle traffic. And then my final slide is a summary of what Senate Enrolled Act 27 contemplated. If the Chicago Bears decide to relocate their stadium to Northwest Indiana in Hammond, then the funds that are being deposited in the IFA account can be used for initial infrastructure work to be done related to the stadium development. It also contemplates that the food and beverage tax and the innkeeper's tax that would be created in Lake and Porter County would replenish the $700 million to be redistributed to the other counties that are not directly receiving the benefits of the infrastructure around where the stadium footprint would be. So the $700 million would come back in the form of those taxes to the IFA and then be redistributed for transportation and infrastructure work in the other toll road related counties. And that concludes my prepared remarks.
Any questions? Senator Delaney, or Representative Delaney.
Thank you. First, let's just go to your chart and use that. On the second page, it says $700 million. Where did that number come from?
Negotiated.
Is that a commitment that's been made to support the infrastructure around the proposed football stadium?
No, sir. So
what is that number other than the negotiated number? Is it set aside for any purpose?
So the discussions probably started almost a year ago with the concessionaire to go through the process, whether the state was interested in amending the lease again. We had amended it one time before. And so the $700 million was determined based on the levers. So the request was for additional levers that we were not agreeable to. We were agreeable to the semi-annual tolling versus annual tolling. And in exchange for semi-annual tolling and the floor from 2 to 3%, they were willing to provide $700 million of a cash payment as well as the ability to share. So we analyzed it from a finance authority. We also had our external financial advisor take a look at it to see if based on what the state was willing to do with amending the lease, was the $700 million payment reasonable?
So you're saying that this really had nothing to do with the football stadium. This was started some time ago, and this is an independent effort to see if the state could get a one-time payment for adjusting the toll road agreement. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, we understand that transportation financing is a challenge, and so this is another opportunity to find the resources for transportation and infrastructure-related financing.
Okay, and if I understand the slide that's up there, the bottom item, we're going to find a way, is it another $700 million to send back to the 7 counties that are along the toll road? Or what's that $700 million?
No, sir, it's essentially repaying. So
Repaying whom for what?
the $700 million that is going to be paid by the concessionaire to the state
Right.
for amending the lease
Right.
could be used for infrastructure related to the stadium. If it is, in fact, used for infrastructure related to the stadium, then the Lake and Porter counties will implement the taxes that will come back to the Finance Authority that will essentially repay the $700 million so that we can then redistribute it to the other toll road related counties so that all counties share, I'm not sure if it's equally, but all counties will share in the modification to the lease agreement. So it's $700 million.
I'm trying to track, so work with me.
Sure.
So the toll road company pays the state $700 million because of something that has nothing to do with the football stadium.
Correct.
If the football stadium goes forward, $700 million would go into infrastructure from this fund.
Not determined, because
Excuse me?
the amount has not been determined.
Some number.
Correct.
Could it be more than $700 million?
I believe in testimony with Senate Enrolled Act 27, the testimony was that, and I think Senate Enrolled Act 27 requires that the state or that the club would have to put in more than half of, or 2 times whatever the state is committed to. And preliminary estimates were around $1 billion for the state and $2 billion for the club.
But there's no cap as to the state's contribution. Okay.
Well, I guess no cap has been talked about.
All right, so let's go back. So we get $700 million. If we decide we're going to put it towards this stadium,
Yes.
and let's assume it's all spent on wonderful infrastructure, it all would be spent in Lake County, presumably.
Correct.
Then, in return, the local governments in Lake County, Hammond, and the county impose these new taxes on food, beverage, and hotels. That money goes to the counties other than Lake County.
The other, correct. For transportation and infrastructure.
Does it come back to the state?
Only for distribution purposes. So it would be the.
So we don't get the money back. It's very interesting. The state does not get back the $700 million additional that it got from the toll road. That money instead, through taxes, is submitted back to the local governments in the other counties, and the state just doesn't get anything out of it.
Theoretically, it gives the ability for NDOT to reprogram their transportation projects to other counties because these counties would be the beneficiaries of the funds that are restricted for infrastructure and transportation purposes.
But anyway, so this measure, if we vote yes, if we put this on the agenda, we're triggering the possibility of certain taxes in Lake County.
Correct.
We're triggering the possibility of $700 million going to the counties other than Lake that are along the toll road.
Like a Senate Enrolled Acts 27
Right.
put those wheels in motion.
It said that's where it could go. Okay. What does the toll road company get out of this?
They get the ability to have semi-annual increases versus annual increases and a new floor of 3% rather than 2%. And in order to protect the upside from the state's perspective, we will share in the upside if they do, in fact, recoup more than $700 million.
So if I'm the toll road company, the first thing I'm looking for is rate increases, and we have a formula for that. If I apply those increases, which I can do, they got it 1.5% per sure twice a year.
Correct.
Okay, but maybe more if inflation is there, right?
Correct.
So if I'm their accountant, I'm saying, okay, how fast can I get the $700 million back that I just paid the state, which goes to Lake County? But I can keep going after that. These toll increases don't stop because the toll road got back to $700 million. Is that right?
Correct. If they make the business decisions to continue to increase tolls, you are correct. But the share, or the state will be sharing in the upside.
Well, let's get there. So they can make those increases. And there's no time limit for how many years they can do this for, other than the lease ends in 2080 something or other. That's the only time limit.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to approve this, what I consider tax increase, twice a year for 50 years, roughly 50 years. Okay. Now, let's assume this goes great and they get their $700 million back. What does the state, when does the state start sharing in these increases?
As soon as they will be, we've agreed upon a certification that will happen every year. And as soon as the certification states or certifies that they have earned or recouped the $700 million that they've paid the state, then in the following year, the state will start to share in those revenues.
And what is our share at that point? They got the
50%.
$700 million back, and there's still money coming in.
50% of the upside.
50% of that goes to the state. Does the state currently receive anything from the toll road?
Do not.
Do the county governments across the toll road area receive anything?
Do not.
They do not. Okay, so this is a big fiscal change to them potentially.
Correct.
And to the state potentially. Do you have an estimate of how much money we'll get after the $700 million is paid back?
We do not.
What's the total revenue on that road? What's the toll company getting right now in terms of revenue?
The state receiving?
The state's getting nothing.
Correct.
So what's the toll road company getting in terms of?
Yeah, I can get back to you on that, but I do not have that information with me.
Have you done an estimate as to how much we'll get?
How much that we will get?
Yeah.
Have not. Because it's uncertainty on which year and how much that would be.
Do you have a range?
Of the amount?
Yeah, I mean, what's a lousy return after they get 700 million? What's a great return? Do you have a range?
Well, we're focused on the upfront payment that we believe is a fair payment based on what the levers that we're allowing. So even if it's break even from now until 2081, the state comes out ahead. Essentially, the concessionaire is taking the risk here, that we're receiving $700 million up front, and the risk is whether the road maintains its current volume or not.
Okay, well, that's a very interesting transaction. I noticed, by the way, the document you provided us is called a resolution. That's what we're supposed to act on. It's this resolution authorizing the Indiana Finance Authority to enter into a second amendment to the toll road agreement, right? That's what you passed, what, 2 days ago? Is that right?
Oh, you're talking about the Indiana Finance Authority? Yes, sir.
Yes, the Indiana Finance Authority. I have it in my hand here. It was attached to the document. It's a resolution authorizing entering into a second amendment to the toll road agreement, right?
Yes, pursuant to state statute, the Indiana Finance Authority must authorize any amendment to the lease agreement because the lease is between the Finance Authority and the concessionaire. Any amendment of that lease needs to become as a review item before this board.
That's all understood. And your board approved this resolution authorizing the signing of an amendment 2 days ago. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
We cannot affect it until reviewed by this body.
You're getting ahead of me. Can I see a copy of the proposed amended and restated toll road agreement?
Certainly.
Okay. You have not yet submitted that to the committee, as I understand it.
I'm not sure if it's the materials that were sent over or not, but I have a copy with me and we can send it over.
It wasn't in my materials, and I've asked for it, but very recently, because I only got this 2 days ago. So I don't have in front of me the amended and restated toll road concession agreement that I'm being asked to allow you to enter into. Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear. You're nodding yes, okay. I trust you know that I, for one, am very reluctant to do any such thing because all I have is a slide deck and a very legalistic, short little authority to enter into an agreement that's not been seen. All right, let's see if there's those answers are enough to get me set back a little bit. Let me see what else I can find out here that's important. Yes, critically, we get the $700 million. It's sitting in your account. It's where I think a special holding account. And the Bears deal does not go forward, okay? Let's just say this year, sometime this year, this summer, it doesn't go forward. What happens to the $700 million then?
Sits in our account until next legislative session, and the General Assembly will decide how that is spent.
So we will have taxed or told our citizenry, signed an agreement that those increases can occur, and the $700 million will just go into the general fund of the state of Indiana or wherever the state legislature sends it. Is that correct?
I'd have to review the statute, whether it's required to go for infrastructure along the toll road, but I think that's the spirit, that those funds would be spent for transportation and infrastructure related activities in those counties that the toll road runs through.
Is that required by the amendment or by the statute or by the Senate Bill 27 or anything else? Is that required?
Senate Bill 27 does state that these funds need to be spent for transportation and infrastructure related projects within those counties.
And that includes the $700 million that might be left in your account because the Bears deal doesn't go forward?
Yes. The way that the Senate bill, I don't have it in front of me, but my recollection for the way that bill was phrased was these funds, and it specifically mentioned the counties in which it could be spent.
So the other 85 counties would not participate in this, is that right?
Other than NDOT being, or have the ability to redeploy funding that would normally or perhaps be programmed in those toll road related counties, they could redeploy those funds to other counties.
Well, if I read it right on page 18 of the bill, some of it could be spent in Lake County. It'd be all of the counties, right? So the Bear deal doesn't go forward, $700 million sitting in your account. You can spend it in any of the 7 counties along the toll road, which includes Lake County.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Have you had any hearings? So the trucking industry, for example, or people who drive their cars on the toll roads could comment on this proposal?
No, sir.
I can tell you I've had no reaction other than some press inquiries because I only learned about, I had the unsigned proposal, your summary, last Thursday or Friday, and then I now learned that you've done it, but I've never seen the contract. So do you intend to have hearings before you sign the contract with them to hear what the public has to say?
It's not required by statute, and we'd not plan to, sir.
So the only people who can say yes or no to this, under your interpretation, are the 5 members of this state budget committee sitting here today.
The IFA board.
Well, you already acted.
Correct.
So it's us or nobody. Thank you.
Senator Skotsky.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Jim, thanks for being here. My question is, so let's say we've got a series of positives. We have the ability to bring in $700 million here rather quickly. That $700 million, the Bears Stadium, they do come. So a lot of these dollars are going to go to that area to improve the infrastructure, so it will help with all of the additional traffic flow, the ability for people coming into the games. And then I'm guessing, I'm not guessing, I hypothesize, the additional counties that were included, then those dollars additionally, that becomes part of that whole corridor because that's probably where you're seeing the greatest population that is going to be necessary to I mean, it'd be wonderful if we could go all the way east, but the bottom line is this is being looked at probably because this is going to be the main corridor where the greatest number of people are going to be traveling through. Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So say that this happens, that all goes well. We have the $700 million. We're going forward. We're going to be raising some additional dollars. And then if that happens, that will be further in the future. And the legislature then will have say over how those dollars will be spent. I think I heard that correctly?
Correct.
So the legislature is going to have that control. But as it's written right now, if the legislature deemed it necessary, they could allow those dollars to continue to flow along the Indiana toll road counties, since that is the direction right now, unless the legislature changes that, correct?
Correct. From Senate Enrolled Act 27 does require the funds to be spent within the toll road counties.
Okay. And so potentially going another 5-10 years in the future, again, a series of positives. Not everyone wants to see additional tolling. I understand that. But for years and years, we have discussed that as one of the better means of using like a user fee to pay for infrastructure improvements. Just say as a potential modeling, now we have a system far in the future where the Northern Indiana Toll Road is bringing dollars back to the communities of all of the users of that road. So potentially, other road systems could begin to employ what has been talked about for a long time and pay for the user fees within their own communities also. That's far out, it's a little, but it is potentially possible. So it could create a model that is sustainable.
Better question for NDOT, but yes, I believe you're correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple questions. So are the IFA meetings public meetings?
Yes.
Okay, so would you say that technically there was a public hearing because the IFA meeting's public?
The meetings are public. There is not an opportunity for the public to speak or comment, but they are able to, either before or after relay their opinions of what the IFA board is doing, but there is a public meeting.
So during the meeting, they can listen, but they can't interact?
That's correct.
Okay. So under the current agreement, like I heard Representative Delaney say, so they'll be able to do these increases until the lease is up. So under the current agreement, they can already do that though, right? Like there's no time frame on when their increases stop, because they can increase it periodically already
Annually.
until eternity, or until the lease ends.
That's
so
correct.
What this does, it doesn't change that. It just says instead of once a year, they can raise it twice a year.
Correct.
And it also increases the floor of the amount they can raise.
That's correct.
Okay. So the other thing I would mention is, since before I was born, it was always in statute that the toll road money had to be used in the toll road counties. The methodology there was the people that live there are pretty much paying the tolls. And I can say, I think Senator Skoski and I are probably the only two up here that represent toll road counties, and we're probably the only ones that pay to use that road. I mean, and so my entire life, we've paid to use that road, basically. And the money always stayed in those 7 counties. Now, when we did major moves in 2006, that changed. So for all those years, it stayed in those counties. In 2006, we did major moves, and we said, well, we'll give those counties a little extra money, but we're going to distribute it to the rest of the state. So is it fair to say in Senate Bill 27, we basically took it back to the way it was for several years?
I agree.
And money's fungible. So like you said, if NDOT feels they have projects, they could say, well, we were going to spend X amount in these toll road counties, but since they can get the toll road money, we can maybe shift that money to another part of the state. So the state would still benefit from the money from the toll road indirectly.
Correct.
Okay. So I appreciate your responses. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so are there any motions to remove anything from the agenda? Representative Delaney.
Yes, I move that we delete the item currently under discussion relating to the Indiana Finance Authority. I would not, that's my motion. And by the way, for the record, because Representative Porter's not able to be here, I'm the voting member from the House Democrat side.
Correct. Is there a second? All right, Chair doesn't hear a second, so it will not be removed from the agenda. So with that, we have the agenda in front of us. Is there a motion on the agenda?
Move this agenda, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. So any other committee discussion? We're working on our summer schedule. There'll be 3, we'll say, travel dates. For 3 different months, we'll have travel time. And then in December, the 4th meeting, as always, will be here in this room for the forecast. So we're working on the agenda, the dates, where we're going to go. Once we have kind of that in place, I'll start distributing it to the members. So with that, we will adjourn.